And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to GeekWatch. Join the watch, ladies and gentlemen, and I need to fix this and move this down here. There we go. Because there was a bit of an overlap problem. But it is that time. This is the debut episode, and I'm going to need the shame bell because we are missing one person.
Yeah, trust me, I know.
Shame! Shame! Shame!
Doku is not here.
Because, yeah, you might have noticed that I've been saying all week, and I said this twice earlier tonight, that it was supposed to be me and Monk. Yeah. Yeah. Doku is late and gay again. And this was his fucking idea. So excuse me. I'm going Doku hunting.
Quack, quack, quack. At least we won't have to deal with an annoying.
As you can see, we've called in a ringer.
Yeah.
A ringer. I didn't know that you could imagine me that way.
But never fear, because there's always a means of
The chat's like, get him, Shade!
there's always a means of improvising, and in this particular case,
Monk, you're cutting off.
Okay, how am I doing now?
Monk, you're Cylon and you're breaking up, dude.
Okay, am I still Cyloning?
Ooh.
Nope, you think you're coming back.
Sounds like you're coming back right there.
Okay. Discord's been weird for me this weekend. Anyway,
Clearly.
yeah, this as I mentioned in my vlog, and Shade has mentioned in his soapbox. There's been a bit of burnout going on in the temple because of a lot of people acting goddamn retarded, and the fact that the topics have gotten a little repetitive. So instead of just continuing on as it was, I decided, you know what, let's do a new spin. And GeekWatch is the result. And since this is a fresh start of a show, maybe I'll put this up on SoundCloud or Spotify. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not Spotify. I'm probably not big enough to do that, but we'll see. Plus, I don't want to get Games Workshop's attention, although I'll probably end up having it eventually. Now, with that in mind, the general thing with GeekWatch is it's just gonna be us talking about geek shit for however long we feel like talking about it, with a general topic idea. But knowing me and knowing how this place works, I am perfectly aware of the fact that the topic in question and how we go about it may end up changing because nothing's for sure around here.
Yeah.
Not to mention, geeks tend to tessellate when they talk about things they're passionate about.
Oh yeah. As long as we stay in the general motif of what we're going for, I don't think it'll be too much of a problem.
And the originally the idea was to talk about one of the three topics in this week, but after a bit of mulling it over, I decided let's expand it a little. So the subject matter for the inaugural episode of the Geek Watch. On Kira's asking, do we get to help select the next topic, or do you guys vote on it by yourself? I'm doing it as a self vote kind of thing for the time being. Um, largely because if I put it up to voting, then I run the risk of putting in a topic that some of us might be less familiar with. And Cure, no matter how many times you ask me, I'm not making a topic about Symphonogear. I'm not doing that, and I'm not making one about any other magical girl series you're thinking of.
Let that dream die now.
Yeah, you should know by now that one of the things I prefer doing is shooting down a problem before it becomes a problem. So I'm heading you off at the pass right there.
And don't you dare say that you weren't thinking it. Don't lie.
Look, I lie for a living.
You're always like, I got someone else for that. Sure. Don't tell me you weren't thinking it. Anyway.
Now that's not to say I won't take suggestions under consideration. Much like how it's under the same policy as the Quest board. I can't promise that everything on there is going to be listed, but it's certainly going to be taken under consideration. Apparently Exia was thinking Disturbed, and while I enjoy Disturbed, there's not a whole lot for me to talk about on that front. I mean, that's...
No, I could see us taking that and running with it in a different direction, you know.
Possibly, but I'd like to cast with a broad net, if you follow me.
That's kind of what I'm going for there, is thinking like maybe bands of that era or bands of that type.
Everything's kind of in flux, and that's also the reason why I said when it comes to the Quest board, the thing that's going to be the focus is news and Kickstarter spotlight. Because as you probably saw, I doubled and shifted Monastery Live. Saturdays are going to be the Gazette, and Sundays is going to be Geek Watch. But the topic for the inaugural Geek Watch, as I was getting to before I was so interrupted, is on space westerns. Let me finagle this around so it's not messing around with the overlay a bit. There we go. Like I said, work in progress. So yeah, I think I can put it right there. That's close enough.
That looks good.
So
I like it.
And thank you for helping out with the edit on that front Shades.
Always a pleasure.
Like I said, originally this the focus was just going to be on Outlaw Star, but when I thought about it, I decided why don't we go with the whole trilogy. It's just a cute Space Core and Trunks in her screaming. Um, now, I think a good spot to open this is what do you guys suppose the the appeal became when it comes to the concept of a space western?
There's a lot to really go over in that kind of thought. It's because one, there's not many shows that even come close to what these three created. Like even in the realm of anime, despite the humongous amount that have come out before and since, a genre and motif like this isn't something we saw a lot of. But I
Even
think
outside
that
of
was
anime, we don't see a whole lot of
especially
it.
outside of anime, especially outside of anime. But even within, considering that they literally could make anything, they still really don't tackle this particular kind of motif very much.
I mean, I've seen it a few times with stuff like Gun X Sword, um, but it doesn't happen often. I'd say there is certainly the possibility that other trends became popular, but I know somebody might say original series Star Trek. Keep in mind that it was billed as a space western, basically to con CBS.
Yeah. To
So
call those to even say that those were space westerns is kind of a misnomer anyway.
yeah.
Like,
So I think the largest draw, specifically from these three, and in general with the whole genre, is going to be the exploration aspect of it. Even if there isn't a lot of exploration to be had, there are worlds to be built. There are stories that you see in the background, and then there's very in-depth stories you can tell within them because the world is now so vast. And with that in mind, Westerns were always about the frontier, the new thing, the wild areas of the world. And so, as a space Western, you're in these newer frontiers, these wild edges of society, these fringe areas where the genteel do not live.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get this sense of rustic and rugged. It's the same draw that actual westerns have. The rustic, rugged feel just gives the people a sense of adventure without going too fantastic. Obviously, since we're in a sci-fi world, things are still going to be somewhat fantastic, and especially in the case of Outlaw Star, we have a gun that shoots magic. But that's
we'll get into that.
yeah, it's still it's more grounded than you would from something that has high fantasy elements, and it becomes a little bit more relatable that way.
Yeah, I remember in one of the times that he tackled Firefly, Chuck Sonnenberg, aka SF Debris, who is a glorious madman over the years, and is the man who is a man who shares our mutual hatred of Catherine Janeway and Neelix, because fuck that guy.
Uh, uh,
But he had described the appeal of the Western as it's the story of a man and a place, neither of which can be tamed. And
exactly.
I think that there's definitely an approach with that. Now, of course, here in North America, we have the long-standing tradition of the spaghetti Western, called so because, well, it was cheaper. It was cheaper to hire Italian directors back then than hire American directors. That and the especially funny thing is that a lot of the times they weren't even filming in the States; they were filming in Mexico.
You get a lot more desert, like rough and dirty towns there. So yeah, it's a lot easier that way.
It's definitely going to be easier. And well, what's the one thing that was the order of the day for a lot of the exploitation style films? Being cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Like when calling your budget shoestring would be a insult to shoestrings. Um, it behooves you to have a degree of frugality, even if you can take it a little too far. Looking at you, Roger Corman.
But I think one of the things about like these three particular anime and why they work in this case is, and why they fit the realm of Western, is also the idea of just the freedom that these guys have. Like, yeah, they have very little, like, the movies we talked about earlier were cheap, but so are these guys, because they didn't have much. None of these guys had that much money. These guys didn't make a lot of money doing what they do. And often they ended up having to spend most of it just to keep themselves safe, out of trouble. Mm-hmm. Especially in the case of Cowboy Bebop, that was especially the problem with them. But they had the freedom to just literally do whatever they wanted. They could go anywhere, do anything, and just live their life the way they wanted to live. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the biggest appeals of Westerns in general, and especially these space Westerns, is that we all want that fantasy of being that free to just live that rough life and not have to worry about, answering to anybody or, having to follow any rules. We follow our own rules, our own path. We all would love that idea, and that's where these shows kind of give us that escape.
Yeah. That concept boiled down to two words: rugged individualism.
That's perfect.
Which is a lot more respectable than rural simplicity, which is just a half-baked fantasy.
Oh, look who's finally!
Hello.
Yeah, I had some family issues to deal with. I'm just getting home. Sorry about that, guys.
Still, late and gay.
Yep, as usual.
This was your idea, motherfucker. You have no. I understand family things. I mean, I'm a family man myself, but still.
Yeah.
Hey, it might have been my idea, but I'm pretty sure you guys are at least still having fun. Otherwise, you would still be here.
There's no doubt.
But when it comes the one I'd like to open with first when addressing the trilogy is the one that ended up becoming the flag bearer of the three, and that is Cowboy Bebop. And the reason why I want to open up with this one is, as you guys know, I sometimes fancy myself a bit of a historian. I like seeing how historical events play out when it comes to fan culture and other matters. It's the reason why I absolutely adored the Hodorowski documentary on the Dune that he almost made. And in the case of Cowboy Bebop, the historical aspect that I find fascinating is that this was the first step in showing the viability of a Western audience, because if it weren't for Toonami, Cowboy Bebop would have gotten canceled a lot sooner.
Yeah, because it wasn't even Toonami. This was Adult Swim. This did not air on Toonami until the relaunch. But I do. You're definitely on the point where Adult Swim helped put this series on the map. Yep. And it wasn't even just that. It was the fact that this series showed the Western world that dubbed anime can be good. I mean, we had some decent dubs prior to this, but this was the first one that knocked it out of the park, and it was one that everyone saw because it was shown to a mainstream audience, even if it was like at 11 o'clock at night.
I could have sworn that Cowboy Bebop was part of the original Toonami lineup.
Nope, never touched Toonami. Never.
No, it wasn't. I actually remember it was Adult.
It was always at night, so it wasn't Toonami.
They could not have shown this on Toonami because of all of like the cigarettes, and the guns, the alcohol. There's no way they could not have censored this enough for Toonami.
Yeah.
Just Faye's Valentine costume alone is enough to get some angry calls.
Yeah.
And actually, James, you bring up a really good point about the dub. The only other dub before it that would have been better, quote unquote, better than the original would have been the DBZ dub. But
and even that's questionable.
I prefer honestly, I prefer the English dub over the Japanese dub, but that's neither here nor there. It's not just this one. All three of them have fantastic dub work. They're working with some extremely great actors, but it's also during that time where these actors some of them couldn't use their real name. I remember for the longest time Stephen J. Bloom saying David Lucas was just one of his friends, and he could get in some real trouble with the Screen Actors Guild if people kept saying that David Lucas and Stephen J. Bloom were the same person.
So I was right. The whole pen name thing and a lot of uncrediting, which makes archiving certain voice roles, especially early on, a royal pain, as I'm sure that Shade's can attest to with some of the people he's interviewed. Look, this isn't me throwing shade about that particular gaffe, because anyone would have made that.
Yeah, but in some cases, these dubs were not only as good as their counterparts, but for specific episodes or specific scenes, they exceeded their counterparts.
Yeah.
I know that just about anything Steve did with Spike, it feels a lot more Spike than the Japanese Spike. I've watched them side by side. The Japanese Spike is super awesome. He's really great at the role, but Steve embodies it. It is him for that role.
I think one of the big reasons that Bebop ended up being the flag bearer is due to the fact that even though it falls very squarely into that space western motif, there's two things. One, even with all the world hopping, it keeps itself fairly consistent. You could easily see each of the worlds as their own kind of country, where you've especially since they're kept very consistent. You've got a lot of Chinese anytime you're on Mars, for instance. You've got a lot of Latin America anytime you're on the belt. And the other thing is that the sort of, and hey there, JT, welcome to the party.
Hey guys, how's it going?
How's it going? We had a bit of a scramble, but it's cool, and cool is good.
All right,
Yes.
so good.
We're just opening since the topic is on space westerns. We're just opening with Cowboy Bebop because of its historical significance, and what I was getting into is it kind of shows Watanabe's love of different types of film genres. Like,
there's a lot of noir splashed into Cowboy Bebop, a bunch of it.
Easily.
I'll put it like this: the first episode, Asteroid Blues, is one giant homage to the L trilogy.
Yep.
Well, part of the L trilogy, because not all of it had come out by then, but especially stuff like El Mariachi and Desperado.
Mm-hmm.
Even if your protagonist is named Asimov, but that's one of those things that always made me laugh, simply because given how deep I am with SF, if I hear the word Asimov, you know exactly who I'm thinking of.
Right.
Yeah. And Spike, I would say that with each member of the cast, aside from Ein, because there's not a whole lot you can do with Ein, each of them kind of represents a different film genre. In the case of Spike, it is John Woo films. Like, a lot of his stuff feels like Hard Boiled or the Long Tomorrow. And this is going to be a deep cut. This is going to be a deep cut for you, JT. A Bittersweet Life.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Which, if you're a fan of John Woo films, or a fan of the noir style, I highly recommend seeing A Bittersweet Life.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, in the case of someone like Faye, I'd go with Bond films. Faye feels like a Faye feels like a Bond girl to the T. It's just in this case a Bond girl who nobody's putting up with her shit because everybody trusts her as far as they can throw her.
A Bond girl with no bond, as it were.
Yeah. Jets.
What's a girl to do?
Although I always apparently Chuck always found it funny that she is so barely tolerated. And to be honest, it'd probably be the same thing. I'd probably have like 5 or so cameras watching her just in case she tries to steal something.
And still always worried that it's not enough.
Well, and also Faye has very strong undertones when it comes to old school heist movies as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But she's always good about doing those kind of heist plans.
Yeah.
oh, and Mildred, maybe you can help me out with this because I've always been trying to put my finger on this. It doesn't star a female lead, but it's the Lost Pass type of backstory. That's the twist I never saw coming from Faye's character, but I love it. It works perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Lost and destitute.
I think that's something that was kind of hinted at when she claimed that she was a Roman.
Well, the movie specifically I'm thinking about is someone who is if I remember correctly, they were either a gypsy or a tyke. And no, I'm not talking about Snatch.
Oh, good. Wait, Snatch is great. Snatch is great.
That is an amazing movie. If anybody hasn't seen it, I don't know what you're doing with your life. No, this movie was from the 1960s, I believe.
I'd have to do some checking because when it comes to the broader film runs of the 60s, I'm not as much of an expert in that as I am earlier or later decades. But
Let's just say watching AMC at night will give you a plethora of very interesting movies you've probably never seen before.
Yeah, fair points.
Or Turner classic movies on the right day.
Actually, something I wanted to bring up in terms of because we were talking about why Cowboy Bebop was the flag bearer. I think there is another aspect of this that I think needs to be talked about, is the fact that of the 3 that we have here, Cowboy Bebop is the most grounded in a semblance of reality.
That's true.
Because especially by the end, Trigun has a very much alien type aspect to it. Outlaw Star has a very magical aspect to it throughout most of its series. But Cowboy Bebop, even with episodes like Brain Scratch, I had to bring it up at some point because Brain Scratch, good fucking god. But even with that episode, there was a semblance of realism to it. Like not the kind of realism where it felt like it could really happen, but just a sense that everything felt grounded
Within the confines of its world.
On the most sci-fi hardness scale, it was closer to a harder sci-fi. Yeah,
it's funny you mentioned grounding when it comes to something like Brain Scratch because of what that was referencing. Are any of you familiar with Heaven's Gate?
I am very well aware of Heaven's Gate. I was around during that time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes.
That's basically what they used it as the framework. The whole Heaven's Gate cult.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, even though it was that weird VR internet thing going on with it, digitizing the soul, even then, like you said, it was based on something that really happened, and every episode felt like something that, take away the sci-fi element, could actually happen.
Yeah.
It's still a very
real
human.
world.
It's still a very human story.
And
yeah.
As far as the whole idea of digitizing the soul, that already had a precedent in the 90s, because if you want to see the patient zero for that kind of thing, I point you to the work of John Gibson, especially Neuromancer.
Yeah, the beginning
And
of
also,
transhumanism.
do androids dream of electric sheep?
Yeah.
Yes.
Although, in the case of do androids dream of electric sheep, I ended up when I was at a I think it was either at Borders when they were still around. God, I miss Borders.
I miss Borders.
Or Barnes and Noble. This was just one of those unfortunate things because on the price tag on the back it had to list the title in the first line and then list the last name of the author. So unfortunately, if you read the thing off, it looked like "Do Androids Dream of Dick?"
Yep.
Yeah,
I've seen
yeah.
that. I've seen that.
Those old ISBN markers.
What's that robot?
Gotta love it.
What's that robot chicken sketch? You know, here it is, a fully functional and totally automated. Can you fuck it? Can you fuck it?
No!
But Shades, I like you brought up the idea of being grounded or being more the more realistic of the three. And this is something no one ever, at least no one I've ever talked to about Cowboy Bebop ever mentioned. One of my favorite things, and I know this is like would come off of like really bland, the fact that you have a spaceship that can go through the hypergates and everything, but then it can also land on water when you land on a planet, like a boat.
Well,
Like,
well,
I love that aspect.
They made
I love
it
that
clear.
too.
Yeah, it's definitely a case, and because again, consistency with the ship's environment. But they outright stated pretty early on that the Bebop was originally a fishing ship.
Yeah, I love that. Like, it's small attention to detail like that that gets overlooked, but that really shows you like the art or the artists and the writers, the creators of the series really were paying attention to what they're doing.
Well,
Like, nothing is done without purpose.
let's
We
not
see
forget
that again.
This is Sunrise.
We see that again. Yeah, sorry. Well, we see that again in Watanabe's later work, Space Dandy, which has some of the best spaceship designs ever. You know, as far as even emulating actual nautical devices and stuff. Watanabe has very good taste in spaceships. So
I think what definitely helps is that. Now, say what you will about Sunrise's writing through their various series over the years, but one thing that they are very good at, and one thing that I'm always impressed by, is their sense of technical design.
Indeed.
Like
Well, also, you have to notice. Sorry, Mildred, go ahead.
Just seeing all the moving parts when it comes to the machine work that they put into their anime.
Yeah.
And also, something that you have to notice in anime and manga, as given Japanese culture, the fact that they're an island nation, very much focused on maritime. When it comes to anything they do revolving space, they take the ship aspect sometimes quite literally. Example: Space Battleship Yamamoto, or the Macross, like where they have actual aircraft carriers attached to it. Like they're
or the massive fleets from Legend of Galactic Heroes. I mean,
yeah.
That's full on naval warfare just transposed into space.
And to be fair, when it comes to that, a lot of that is building on pulp science fiction from the 40s and 50s. The same kind of influence that we'd see with certain scenes and the like with Star Wars. But getting back to that whole genre thing with the different characters, Jet Black is very obviously in the film noir thing, as well as the anchor of the proverbial ship, both physically and mentally.
I'd also throw in a little bit of buddy cop, really, the way he interacts with Spike a lot of the times.
Mm-hmm.
More 20s mob cop, like the cop against the mob in the 20s. That's because his backstory is almost directly lifted from something like that.
And I will admit that's a much better approach because of the fact that a key thing with film noir that a lot of people overlook is the relationship between cynicism and optimism. Because something that I think a lot of people overlook when it comes to film noir is the time when that genre started to become prevalent. It became prevalent, especially in Europe, shortly after World War One ended, and you had a lot of people who were coming back after seeing all manner of shit.
Mhm.
Especially since the other as was kind of hinted at, that for some people who had played Battlefield 1, the pioneering aspect with World War 1 from a historian's perspective was this was the first active use of armor within conflicts. Like, this was when you were starting to see tanks actively used in open battlefields. As well as the first there were some instances of automatic weapons in World War One, but it wasn't as prevalent because it was still very, very experimental. And but a lot of the people who came back had a lot of their perspectives shattered after the war. And there's been talk about the whole 1,000-yard stare and that kind of thing, but that's the general gist of what ended up going down. Is you had a lot of people who just did not have that kind of hope, and that's why if you look at a lot of film noir stories, you usually have some younger supporting cast member who hasn't gone through that kind of shit and has some degree of optimism.
Except in the case of Jet and Spike, Spike has no optimism, and Jet's constantly trying to give it to him.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why the film noir thing doesn't apply as well with Jet. It's definitely more buddy cop or a mob cop. And when it comes to I'd say if you want an example of the optimism angle, that'd probably be Ed. Edward Wanhao Piplu Tripliski the Fourth. How I can completely remember that full name to this day, I have no idea.
Edward is the personification of just boundless optimism.
Which perfectly ties into the fact that Ed's the only one who has a story that doesn't end.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, Bebop, and I'm probably getting ahead of myself. I was going to save this for like the end of the Bebop conversation, but to just paraphrase, just to shorten it a little bit, well, to put it simply, Ed really doesn't have any baggage that she's bringing with her. She's basically free from day one, and just moves on just moves on free as she was at the end. So she is basically the personification of moving without moving forward without baggage. She has nothing to overcome because she's always been free.
That's the great thing about Edward is, when you look at your traditional like orphanage style stories, Edward is the antithesis of that. Like,
in a twist.
Exactly. Like, despite being an orphan and having been alone, and I mean, being a genius kind of helps, but that's neither here nor there.
Doesn't hurt.
But in a universe, in a world that's created where you can literally, jump on a ship and travel to another world, like quite literally, she is the personification of that idea of just boundless freedom. You can be a bounty hunter, you can go to Mars, you can go to Saturn, you can see the rim, you can go to Earth, you can do whatever you want pretty much. It is a child's playground, and Edward personifies that type of that type of boundless imagination, that type of endless curiosity.
And
And
it
that's why, honestly, she's my favorite character.
And it gives the world that Bebop lives in that optimism too. It's not just some place where a bunch of shit happens and you got a bunch of shit happens like with Spike or Faye or or Jet's lives. It's not one of those places. There really is a big beautiful world out there, universe out there to be explored and to be lived in. And Edward can move through. Edward can go where so many others can't. So it does, yeah. So that is that ray. That is that ray of light in a very shadowy galaxy.
Now,
Exactly.
I think Watanabe actually did write Edward from the perspective of, if it was us, the reader or the viewer, we would be more like Edward. Like, Edward is almost an injection of not Watanabe himself, but just whoever might find themselves in this universe. Like,
Actually, I'm actually on the Wikipedia. On Wikipedia. Another thing we should point out is that Ed's character was actually inspired by the inner behavior of the music composer Yoko Kanno.
Yep.
oh, I didn't know that.
A little weird, cat-like, but a genius at creating music.
Yeah. No,
to be
Yoko Kanno has been very. She's very eccentric.
To say the least, but yet, is there any other composer out there that is as well remembered as Yoko Kanno? I'd say there's maybe only one other person who even comes close.
Yeah, and the thing is that one person does fall into certain traps that Kano has managed to avoid for most of her career. Like,
Yeah.
like with a lot of composers, it's very easy for them to fall into a particular trap where you hear their music and you immediately think, yeah, that's that composer. A good example of this instance would be Motoi Sakuraba, who I like Sakuraba's work, but there are certain audio cues that Sakuraba does fall back on a little bit too much, to the point where I can just hear it in some random background thing, and then I immediately draw that connection. But with Kano, you can listen to the work that she's done in two different series, and there's not going to be a whole lot of crossover. And to kind of demonstrate this, I did a little experiment early today when I was doing my workout. Earlier on when I was doing my walk, the track, I had an album from Cowboy Bebop on the background, and it was just the instrumental stuff. And since every experiment needs a control, when I was doing some writing for the Isekai Versus review I'm going to be doing later this week, the music that I had was the stuff that she had done for Macross Plus. And if you didn't know any better, you would assume that they were two different composers. Now, granted, Macross Plus probably wasn't completely fair because she had the help of a Philharmonic orchestra, but still.
Yeah, and by the way, for anyone who was wondering, the other composer I was referring to that comes close in terms of popularity and remembrance, Yuki Kajira.
Yep.
Yes.
I can think of a few more modern composers who are pretty ubiquitous these days that reach the same heights. Hiroyuki Sawano.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, from the video games, we have Nobuo Uematsu.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that goes without saying there.
Yeah.
And Uematsu, much like Yoko Kanno, when given the chance to expand, because there was a lot of time where they're just like, oh yeah, make more fantasy music for Final Fantasy. He's like, but I want to do something different. Mm-hmm. When given the chance to expand, the songs you get from him, completely unrecognizable compared to his earlier works.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just look at some of the stuff he did for 10, for 9, for 8, for 7. Some of the stuff there was stuff that you would never have heard from 1 through 6.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Now, with that said, while there aren't a whole lot of because of the fact that we're dealing with a very episode by episode affair, there isn't a whole lot of villains or antagonists to work with. But there is one, even if he only really appears 3 times throughout the whole series. Um, it's an instance of the brightest star burns twice the brightest star burns twice as quickly, and that would be Vicious.
Oh boy.
Everybody knows Vicious.
Which
Yeah.
first off, if you name your kid Vicious, I'm sorry, but you're just there are certain I've mentioned this before, but there are certain names that I think should be on the do not name list for English speaking parents and for Japanese parents. In the case of Japanese parents, any Japanese parents who are considering having a kid, please do not name your child Shinji or Hojo. You are asking for trouble.
One being super depressed and unbearable, the other one being an absolute total asshole.
And also, just on that side note, just quick aside. To this day, I still laugh at all the people who name their kid Daenerys.
Khaleesi. There are people who name their kids Khaleesi as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Lord. Well, it's a side effect. It's a backlash side effect of geek culture going mainstream. We're getting babies with so many wrong names.
I call it the Big Bang Theory effect.
Okay, we can call it
and
that.
fuck that show too.
And actually, Monk, I'm going to correct you. Not Hojo, Toru. Toru is the name you do not want to name.
Actually, no. Throw that one in there too. I'm throwing in Hojo because 1, FF7, and 2, Agito.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But Toru as well, and Agito's even worse because it's got both Toru Hojo.
Yeah. So that's
And also, don't name your kid Kirito either, just because they're going to get bullied for the rest of their life.
Reki Kawahara can't write. Oh,
Don't get me started on that. Let's stay off that topic. We'll be here all night.
Yeah,
That's another show.
that's another
another
light
show.
novel. That's a light novel.
That's a lot. No,
We'll possibly get into that if we do an episode solely focused on isekai, but that's counting the chickens before they hatch.
boy.
Yeah, we still got this series and 2 others to talk about.
Now, now when it comes to light novels, one thing that I will admit that I would have loved to have seen, even though some might argue that this is a case of explaining away the mystery. I would have loved to see either a one-shot manga or a light novel that detailed the Titan War. Now, because of its appearance in the Jupiter Jazz 2-parter, and my gut feeling was always that the basis for something like the Titan War was Vietnam, especially since there's so many pop cultural references from the 1970s throughout Bebop. And yeah, it's not a 1-to-1 thing because Titan was a massive desert and Vietnam was not. But there's
Extremes, though.
There's still the parallel of people coming back from horrible situations. Because
Something happened in the time before Bebop, but we're not really sure what.
The thing that I was always curious about, even at a young age, was what made Vicious the way he is. The only guess that I can have is that he ended up seeing I would say that he ended up seeing just as much shit as everybody else, but even during the Titan War, Vicious was a dick, because I believe it's implied that he was the reason his friend got captured.
Well, I've noticed something about Bebop, and this is kind of my pet theory about Vicious and Spike's past, and also the Titan War, and what makes the universe of Bebop the way it is. If you go through and you look in the entire series, there is no, like, let's take Gundam for example. There's no Federation. There's no Principality of Zion. There's no overarching governmental structure. It very much is a world of localized, kind of localized authority, but not far-reaching or far-spanning. Outlaws, criminal syndicates, absolute freedom, good and bad. There is no foundational structure to the world or the way that the characters interact or other planets interact. So my guess would be the Titan War would be something similar to, I guess, what the end game of the Federation versus the Principality of Zion would look like, where there is no structure. It's just localized authority and governments and criminal syndicates and outlaws running around. Bounty hunters.
If I can add to that canon a bit, I'm pretty sure that the thing that basically killed the thing that really killed any sort of interplanetary government authority was probably the moon incident. Even if we only see flashes of it, we can assess that the hyperspace gate malfunctioned hardcore, and because of that, Earth has ever since been a shithole. Like nobody goes to Earth because it's a whole lot of wasteland and falling rocks from the moon.
So you are right. There really is no centralized federation or ruling government body or anything like that. It very much is again another genre mashup, a bit of a Wild West in that sense.
The closest thing there is the ISSP, and the ISSP acts more like, if nothing else, it acts more like Interpol. In the sense that it's just a means of communication between the law enforcement and bounty hunters of different planets, and there seems to be not a governmental agreement, but a gentleman's agreement, that the bounty hunters are an effective tool for law enforcement, because they can go places that the cops can't.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not officially deputized or anything like that, and there'd probably be some problems if they were, but it's a case of, look, just do your job, bring them in, hopefully alive, and you'll get paid. Bring them in dead, you won't get paid, but we're not gonna hold that against you. Just you do your thing, we'll do our thing, and we'll leave each other alone. Seems to be the approach.
As long as you don't cause too much collateral damage while you're doing your job.
That's how you end up with peppers and beef with no beef.
I knew someone was going to make that reference eventually.
You gotta have to.
Yeah.
If it wasn't him, it would have been me.
I am honestly surprised that hasn't been served at a convention somewhere.
I think it
Who
has.
says it hasn't?
Who says it hasn't?
I'm sure that it has. I just haven't found it, and I am no good with doing the flip when it comes to stir fry, so I'm not going to do it.
There's only like 2 cooking videos of Bebop peppers and beef on YouTube. I have checked, and I'm like, why is this not more popular? Somebody's got to step up and do it right.
Like,
can we get binging with Babish on this? I mean, this is right up his alley.
We totally should. We totally should.
I'm just saying. I think the idea of an anime cookbook is something that I'd like to see down the line. And given the popularity of Food Wars, I think it's more of a possibility.
There is a
Oh,
guy.
yeah.
There is a guy online. I can't remember. I'll find him someday. He does make anime, and most of it is from Food Wars, of course. But yeah. But anyway,
Now,
I actually know who you're talking about because yes, I did get that bored one day and decided to look it up. And yes, I am that person who has made fucking octopus hot dogs.
Taco wieners.
when it comes to someone like Vicious. Now, first off, aside from the approach that I've always seen with someone like him is aside from his nihilistic streak, he seems to portray himself as the angel of death. What with the crow and using a sword when everybody's using guns. And
Yeah, bringing the sword to a gunfight's a stupid idea.
Unlike
It
it
somehow he
is.
pulls it off.
It's anime, of
Like-
course he pulls it off.
it's
Like I
anime.
said,
He's just that good.
Well,
I think
also, I would make the argument. Sorry, Bill, real quick. I'd make the argument that for all of the unbridled, childish, fantastical optimism that Edward brings to the show, Vicious is the counter opposite, the antithesis of that type of mentality. Like when you have a world of unbridled freedom, and take away the child fantastical imagination and blindless optimism, you end up with someone like Vicious.
Who's just a sociopath.
and a
Now, again,
nihilist.
A nihilistic
Nihilistic
sociopath.
Yeah.
Well, and he embodies
you
that
could go.
idea of like what would happen in a world with no overarching structure, like a world full that's essential, almost like full anarcho-capitalist or anarcho-communist, depending on which way you want to look at it, and put it, put warfare and the responsibilities and pain of being an adult or having loved ones lost or seeing death, seeing war, you end up with Vicious. Like, he is the other side of that coin and that Edward is part of.
Yeah,
And
it's like I
Spike
said
is
earlier.
kind of your chaotic good.
Yeah, he is like I said. Ed was the boundless optimism, but Vicious is the personification of some men just want to watch the world burn.
And
Yeah,
that's-
Vicious is this world's Joker, just a lot more
I-
sadistic.
To a degree,
Now, when
you
it
could
comes-
you could say that.
And I
Or
do-
Doomsday.
I do think
Nice.
that his use of a sword, aside from the fact that that's the other reason why I compare him to an angel of death, because of the fact that for him it's an issue of seeing someone's death personally, and there's also the fact that most of the time whenever he takes out a specific target, it is never a case of just one cut. Like when it came to Mao, he cut his throat open and let him bleed out. When it came to the elders for the Red Dragon, he cut their eyes out.
And also, the way that Vicious does his killing is different from everyone else in the series, except for Spike. It is very intimate. Everyone he kills, everyone he gets in a fight with, every time we see him on screen in even if it's not a physical altercation, but just an altercation, it is very intimate.
And
Which is one of the things that makes him one of the best anime villains of all time, is that despite not being in the series as much as you would expect for a main antagonist, you already get that sense that there is a history to this character. The way he does things is very much unique to him and him alone. And when he does have interactions with characters, it's not by coincidence, it's not by accidents, it is calculated and deliberate. And it comes through thick, which is probably the reason he's actually not in the series as much as you would expect. Because when he is there, he's only there for as much time as he's needed, and it gets the point across perfectly. And that's something that I think the series is probably what made the series as popular as it was, is the use of very strong, very intimate characters that are there just enough to hook your interest, but not enough to make it overdone.
Yeah.
Like, we're not talking about Bleach here.
Exactly. And a best example of that is, I believe it was one of his first appearances, is when he sees Faye in the theater. Like, he's just right there, right over her. And just the look on Faye's face, the absolute sheer terror of realizing who that is. And then he tells her, he asks her, "What's my name?" And you just hear her have to say it, and you can just tell she's like, "Oh God, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die right now. I know it."
I'm sorry.
It doesn't help that she's sitting right next to Mao's corpse.
Yeah.
That doesn't help either, no. So she's like,
Well, that's what makes that. That's what makes that character so good, and I would say this is the true mark of someone who really knows how to write characters and write a story, like master class. You do not need to show the antagonist, but the second they show up, because you know the other characters so well, like for someone like Faye Valentine to be that utterly shocked, to not try to run away, to not try to woo her way out of things, to not try to use her womanly charms and wiles, just, oh, I'm fucked. We don't necessarily know who he is. Like, we kind of do, but we kind of don't. But the second we see her react in that way, we know exactly who that is. And we're scared of him too. Because it's like, oh shit, is he gonna kill her? Is he gonna kill Faye?
Silver-haired antagonist who uses a sword to kill people in an intimate fashion and is only around when he's needed? I'm sorry, did you mean Griffith from Berserk?
"Oh."
No, legit. When you said greatest anime villains of all time after that description, it was 1,000-yard stare as I heard guts screaming in my soul.
Ooh, nice.
I was like, oh god!
Not again.
Nicely said. Nicely said.
And this is where I hear some edgelords saying Griffith did nothing wrong.
Don't even start, man. Don't even start.
Inner guts rages.
That's
Guts.
I know we don't have. I know we don't have a bar drinking game for this one, but that's a drink.
Oh, hold on.
But with that particular thing in mind, I'd like to move into Old West Jesus. Now, something that I'll always find funny when it comes to Trigun is for starters, looking at
Theme song.
Now, first off, this is the only one that was not animated by Sunrise. It was instead animated by the always awesome Madhouse, who
Of course.
I think I can only
Madhouse
find maybe one or two anime that Madhouse has animated that I didn't care for, and the closest time to them animating something that I was genuinely let down by was the Marvel project. And I've gone over this with you, JT, but you remember that teaser we saw at Comic-Con that year, and how it seemed like we were getting Iron Man in the vein of 80s mecha in terms of camera work, and Wolverine in the style of a Kawajiri anime.
That was a while ago, but yes, I think I can recall.
Yeah, and what we ended up getting was basically Madhouse playing the Marvel characters that they got straight. Which
Too straight.
it wasn't bad. It just felt like a waste of potential. And as goofy and as batshit ridiculous as the Marvel mangaverse was, I'd say that was somewhat better, because in that case there was an attempt to bring in motifs from anime into Marvel. It was completely weird and really really dumb in places, like having Black Cat look a little bit too much like Rei Ayanami, but at the same time, things like having Spider-Man being a ninja, and Venom being a rogue member of that clan, that's a natural fit. Having Iron Man be a mech, that's a natural fit given the Hulkbuster armor. Um, but they
Back
just
to
did,
Trigon.
but they just and honestly, I think that doing the Japan arc with Wolverine in the vein of Ninja Scroll is something that writes itself, which is a shame that they didn't do that. Instead the big bad has to be AIM. But
Yeah, God, I'm not even gonna get into my rant on that one. That's an entire show in and of itself.
but some a my one of my favorite stories when it comes to Yasuhiro Naito's portrayal of his early work with the Trigun manga comes from an interview that he did a long time ago where he basically slagged on his own artwork because Naito before he did manga, he was an architect, and he has outright admitted that it took him a while to get the concept of visual storytelling. If you look at the first few volumes of the manga, um, there's not really a proper flow between panels, and he's even admitted as such.
Mm.
I remember.
Well, he exhibits a very rare quality in artists in general, and I'm including writers, painters, musicians. His level of self-awareness is something that is very uncommon.
Like what happened in the interview is somebody was trying to butter him up by talking about how his art style was dynamic, and he cuts him in and says, "Is that the English word for incomprehensible?" Which, okay, that's a little harsher than I would have done it, but I can't completely disagree. Now, given the whole desert planet thing, Trigun is the one that has the most Western appearance, even with the tech elements throughout. And I'd say this is the one that draws its most heavy of influences from Wild West TV series like Gunsmoke or Kung Fu.
Hell, hell, the fucking planet they were on was named Gunsmoke.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they couldn't make that more obvious if they tried.
And also, a lot of those tech elements, like, for us, yeah, we're watching a futuristic sci-fi western. But we would view those tech elements the same way as people would view a railroad or a steam engine, or it. So it actually works despite being thousands of years more advanced and now archaic technology, like a la Warhammer 40K universe. But it still fits for, you know, that it's brand new, it's different. There's, you know, one of these things is not like the other.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually do like that element of Trigun because it's handled very. I'm not going to say it's handled well. It's handled in such a way that it still makes it believable, but you still feel that this world is, you know, destitute.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like a dying world, despite having all this technology.
It feels more like a world clinging to life, just barely, you know, clinging to life,
Yeah.
because of the desert and, you know, so the reliance on plant and the very heavy, like deeply heavily reliance on the plants for energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that aspect really does lend well to the element of a western. Like, those are essentially the oasis in the desert.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And a la Arabian Nights.
Now, an amusing bit of coincidence is right around the time that I discovered Trigon. there was a certain game series, one that has been near and dear to my heart for many years that I was delving into around that time, and that particular series being Wild Arms.
Ah, yeah.
Oh yeah, the one that never quite took off.
Mhm.
Still one of my favorites, though.
Yeah, good stuff.
We'll probably have an opportunity to cover Wild Arms in the future, but the the first thing I want to get into is I'd say more than anything else, Johnny Young Bosch's portrayal of Vash the Stampede is what made him a lot more than his appearance on Power Rangers did.
Oh yeah.
Oh, no doubt about that. No arguments from me.
This was his first big jump into anime, and he knocked it right the fuck out of the park.
Talk about hitting it right on the first shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, not many VAs could pull that off that quickly.
Especially
And also the way he does it, like his portrayal is the same way as yeah, I know, controversial name to bring up for certain people. The way Vic Mignogna does Edward Elric, like it fits the character so perfectly that no one else could do it at this point in time. That's how good he did it. Like you are that character.
Just stuck the landing and struck a pose. So that kind of thing.
And
he pulled a Ginyu Force.
I will admit I was being a bit hyperbolic with the Jesus joke when it comes to Trigun, and some of that is by Naito's own doing, because he's admitted that he is a big fan of the wandering hermit archetype of character.
Mhm.
But in his particular case, in the case of someone like Vash, what you have is somebody who is exceptionally skilled and goes out of his way to hide it, with just the fact that he has possibly the worst luck in the universe.
Insert Kirito joke number 2.
Well,
He is a shit. He does seem to be a shit magnet.
yeah, and
a bounty on his head doesn't help.
double checking. That particular black cat that always shows up is in every single episode.
It is.
It's like I always joke that the black cats in Trigun are the aliens in South Park.
Yeah.
Like it shows up. It shows up in every single episode, and
And also those 3 old men that are always drinking and playing cards.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I should note that the 3 old men were the inspiration for the cabbage merchant in Avatar.
I didn't know that, actually.
That's in the art book, they outright admitted that's where they got the idea for the cabbage merchant.
That's awesome.
My cabbages! Since we brought that up, fun fact: my buddy TG Omega did a Slayers of Bridge, and he threw in the cabbage guy joke, and I got to do that voice.
Nice.
Actually, you know what? I wonder if that's where the I know at least 2 of you here have seen Konosuba. I wonder if that's not a strange homage when the cabbages show up, and he had because Kazuma has such high luck. I wonder if that's not a homage to that.
I wouldn't doubt it for a minute.
I'm not going to say that it is, but if we got confirmation on that, I would just nod and say, yeah, that makes sense.
Well played.
Yeah. Well, somebody go to the twatters.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, if I could just say one thing about Johnny Young, just to conclude about JYB's performance, this is probably like one of the rare times where Johnny has been allowed to do comedy, because in so many of his roles that came after this, he was Mr. hard ass serious shonen male protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Or Lelouch from
Lelouch, yeah,
yes, or something.
Hell,
just
even,
very
hell,
very
even,
you know
even
very joyless
Kaneda.
protagonist.
Even
Or him too, yeah.
I think the only role that came close was Aureka 7, and even then, just
Renton?
barely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here in Trigun, I mean, we're talking like just this joyous, goofy, just comedic, clown of a character, which is a part of his character to be sure. But
Actually, no. There is one other character he played in the animated version of this, at least, where he got to really cut loose and have some fun.
Oh yeah, which one was it?
Persona 4: The Animation.
Yeah.
He got to have some fun with that.
Since you brought it up, just to contrast, because Vash is that kind of joyous, clown, despite being feared but not really well known by the people of the world type of character. The most powerful scene, anytime everyone brings up Trigun, the first thing I always think of is the donut scene.
Yes, the fucking donut scene.
And everyone who's seen that, who's seen Trigun, knows exactly what I'm talking about, because it is the best scene of the entire series. You cannot change my mind.
Yep.
I don't intend to.
But I should note that I think his luck stat and his bad luck stat are all maxed out, and this is kind of the thing that sets the tone, because we all know how important the first episode is. So you have the whole story about Vash the Stampede, while he's literally in a bar drinking, and unfortunately the bar is not there anymore. And all that he's left is just sitting on a stool. You see him point his gun. Then it cuts to the title splash, and then we see in a flashback later, it looks like he's about to fire his gun, but then he realizes, oh shit, out of bullets.
That is one lucky and unlucky son of a bitch. Yes, that's very. It's like his luck stat is maxed out, but he keeps rolling ones. So yeah.
Yep.
And because of that, there's the fact that even with his skill with the gun, a lot of the times when you see him in fights, he's usually winning by using the enemy's weapons against them, or using their own hubris against them.
Mm-hmm.
Or in some cases losing almost on purpose. Or winning on purpose, but having his own motive to make sure nobody dies.
Well, and they do go out of their way to tell us what his bounty is, and he uses that to his advantage. Like, he'll surrender on purpose, and because hey, I'm worth more alive than dead.
Yeah.
And he does that actually, I think he does that like what, 6 or 7 times in the entire series.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's almost a running gag in the show, which is why it works and it doesn't get tired or tried out.
It doesn't become the Picard problem.
Funny. Oh my god. Yes, you're right. Conversation for another day. But yes.
Yes.
That's not me. That's not me making a French surrender joke, because it's not a stereotype if you keep fucking doing it. Now that being
Also,
he's not wrong.
Real quick, just to finish, I had to check this. So one last comment on Johnny on Bosch. I looked through I looked on behind the voice actors. There is one other character, and it seems like it's always stuff connected to video games where he finally gets to cut loose. Like straight anime, almost every character he's played had some kind of serious tone to it. The other character he's done that actually was comedic, Sengoku Basara. Sarada Yukimura.
Yeah.
Oh lord.
Yeah.
Shades, you're forgetting that still counts as anime.
Well, it had an anime version, but I'm saying the only time, whenever it's a straight anime without it, that's not an adaptation of a video game, he's always straight laced. But whenever it's something based on a video game, that's where he gets the comedic shit.
Mm-hmm.
He does comedy so well. I really wish they would use
all 3 of those roles are amazing.
I really
Maybe we
wish
give
they
him
would
more
give him-
comedy roles.
They really should. They really should.
I'm
But
pretty
I don't know. I guess it just makes the Vash's performance all the more precious. I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's the way to look at it.
But then we have, of course, the two should I call it followers or stalkers? I don't know.
I think stalkers are a good term for that. Yeah, Millie and Daryl.
Yeah,
the insurance girl.
now first off, they are way too nice to be employees of any insurance company. I'm just putting that out there.
None that I know
of.
Millie especially, even though she walks around with a giant fucking chain gun.
When it comes to, I will freely admit that when it comes to the two of them, Millie is better girl, because of her emphasis on family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and actually, Mildred, I would argue Meryl actually could pull off the role of insurance agent. She's just the nicest one in the room.
That's the problem.
No, what I think he means is that she's still a bit of a bossy bitch, but she's a little bit nicer compared to what you normally expect. But she's still, she just barely qualifies.
Oh,
She's the one that's going to lecture you about why you wrecked your car, not try to milk money out of you because you wrecked your car. But you're still not going to enjoy the experience.
Oh, probably work at Allstate.
Hey, that's my insurance provider.
I'm looking.
Then you can answer. Is he wrong?
No, all of the insurance providers at Allstate are wonderful people. Just the most wonderful.
I can tell you she doesn't
the
work
sarcasm
for USAA.
dripping.
But when it comes to no, yeah, Meryl's I'd say between the two of them, it's a very Abbott and Costello kind of thing. Where where Meryl has to be Bud Abbott, and Millie is Lou Costello if Lou Costello was a little less short.
Ouch.
Look, it's that classic one person's a good-natured idiot, the other person's the straight man. It's that kind of dynamic that's been going around in comedy for 100 years. Now
it always works.
Millie could definitely pull off Who's on First with a straight face.
So easily.
No, do not get me started. When I had Mark on earlier today, I was so tempted to ask him who's the tank.
I now want to hear an audio skit of Leah Sargent and Dorothy Fawn doing Who's on First.
I would love that.
I need to hear this now.
I would love that.
Who's going to send it to them via Twitter?
Not me. I'm staying off Twitter these days.
I'm pretty sure there's no way I'm gonna be getting any voice actors communication with me because of how I run my show. So I'm out.
Whoops. Oh well.
I'll talk to our buddy Beltrax. He's good about that shit.
Yeah, I was gonna say I could try, but I don't know how well that's gonna go off.
I don't even have a Twitter, so nope, not me.
I'll talk to Zeltrax about it.
But even with that, I will admit that even back then I'd look at the whole rows upon rows of derringers or the revolving rotary stun gun, and there is one simple thing that I'd end up saying, and Doku Shades, you know where I'm going. You know where I'm going with this gag. That's still not enough, Daka. You get.
God damn! They fucking knew it was coming.
My firestorm cannon.
There's never enough Doka.
Exactly. Never enough Daka for you.
Because
it needs more Daka.
You always need more of it.
You need more Daka. It doesn't matter if it's an Emperor Titan. You need more Daka.
And
If he's gonna ask a dumb question, I'm gonna put you with the grots.
um, something I do want to note, because I saw a lot of people complaining about the fact that the white and black guns in Trigun fire out of the bottom barrel. Now we already know what's hidden in the top barrel, but there seems to be this notion that if it's a revolver, it's got to be out of the top. Except there are examples of bottom barrel revolvers.
No, the Trigun gun is actually modeled on a real firearm. It's extremely rare. I have seen pictures. It's a real thing. It does actually work. I can't
it's
for the life
modeled
of me.
after the Mateba.
I couldn't for the life of me name it off the top of my head, but I just know I've seen pictures, and it is something that has been made.
And if I remember correctly, the firing mechanism on that particular type of revolver is a pin and piston. So yes, it can shoot out of a bottom barrel. And
there is a good reason for firing out of the bottom barrel, and there's also a reason you don't see it often. The reason why it's a good idea is because it reduces flip up. The problem is it's kind of expensive to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's expensive, and if not done properly, as they say, the more moving parts, the more things that can break.
Mm-hmm.
Hence why the AK-47 is such an effective firearm. It only has 7 moving parts, which is why you can bury it in the dirt and in the mud and pick it up and still shoot it, and it works.
As far as the dirt and mud thing, that's not entirely true.
I'm just saying, by comparison to other rifles, maybe second only to the M1, perhaps.
Well, that's nothing compared to a Soviet nugget. You can bury that thing in the backyard for 200 years. Dig it up out of a frozen winter, and it'll thaw it out, derust it, and it will still fire.
But
on ammunition that's rotted.
You got to give the Russians credit. They're essentially synonymous with rugged.
Pretty much.
Although one question one thing that I've always been curious, and maybe I can pick your brains about this. Would it be fair to say that the second hidden gun that Vash gets midway through the series, would you say that that's more modeled off of a Uzi or something else?
I'd say that's more of a it's more of an Uzi, I would say.
I'd say it's somewhere between an Uzi and I'm going to use the slang term for it. I would just call it a grease gun. And anyone who's a fan of World War II history knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, it could be worse. It could be modeled after a Sten gun, because those things were cheap as hell.
Oh God! That thing is more likely to kill you than you are to kill somebody with it.
But of course, I would be remiss when talking about Trigun characters without mentioning my absolute favorite and the poster child for how you'd make a religious character, Nicholas D. Wolfwood.
Yes! The good father himself.
I miss Wolfwood.
The man with and I will admit I have repeatedly used the portable confession booth meme.
The wandering priest that smokes, drinks, is a womanizer, and has a cross-shaped cannon. Yeah,
cross-shaped multi-weapon.
Yep.
Multi-weapon.
Multi-weapon. More appropriate. Yeah.
It's a machine gun, it loads a bunch of pistols, and it's a rocket launcher. It's a multi-weapon.
Mm-hmm. And
I'm just going to call it an armory.
Yeah.
Its official name is the Cross Punisher.
Correct.
And then that design would get reused a few years later for the center head, but that's another story. But I always like the whole thing of you have such a loaded weapon that is heavy because it's full of mercy.
Well, is he wrong?
Well,
you're living on a dying planet, so yeah, matter of perspective, I suppose.
But
And he's voiced by and he was voiced by Jeff Nimoy. What a beautiful smoky voice.
Yeah, and sadly, I just checked. He has not done much. Like, you would think a guy with a voice like that would have been done in a lot of stuff, but outside of the Digimon franchise, he's hardly done anything.
Oh. Must be selective. Yeah, good for him, I suppose. But
Yeah.
I mean, well, Peter Weller doesn't do a whole lot. So
I will say, as far as Trigun goes, Wolfwood is by far my favorite character.
I think.
Oh,
I think
indeed.
I think he was the true breakout for a lot of people. And when it comes I look at him and I see the prototype for Genjo Sanzo in Sayuki, because they both are on a similar motif of while despite their strength of belief, you're not going to see them be the most pious, because it's more about belief, showing that belief through their actions rather than some ornate code of actions. And to be honest, who's gonna censure him from smoking when you're on a desert planet?
Right?
Well, only one person. Millie. And dude, don't tell me that Wolfwood and Millie would not be the best one-off rom-com. You know that shit would be hilarious.
I would pay for that, dude.
Only in the anime, though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the thing.
fair.
The manga and the anime take very different
Yes, they do.
Anybody, if anybody hasn't read it, I have. I actually have all the volumes of Trigun Maximum in my archives, so I can answer any questions if anyone's interested.
Yeah, but one of the things that the way I've always described the dichotomy between Vash and Wolfwood is, we talked about optimism earlier, and Vash is definitely the voice of optimism, while Wolfwood is the voice of truth. Because even with all his antics, he has a lot more of a hardened attitude towards living on Gunsmoke than Vash does.
I would even say Wolfwood does have a flavor of optimism about him. Like, he's not nihilistic, he's not sadistic.
He does have hope for the children at the orphanage that he's trying to, help.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not vicious. We'll say that much.
No, that's why I used when I use the term truth. If I could use a good analog, I'd use the way Hawkeye was portrayed in Avengers EMH. Even if Wolfwood is a lot better tempered than Hawkeye was.
Uh-huh.
No, that's fair. I would say Wolfwood is Vash's counterbalance.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. Well, it's a contrast in ideologies. On one hand, you have Vash, which is the perfect, absolute pinnacle ideal of pacifism and save everybody. Whereas, Wolfwood is compromise and and calculation and
So it's idealism versus realism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very much so. It's kind of like I keep, for some reason, I'm reminded of Unlimited Blade Work, of Fate Zero and Unlimited Blade Works, where it's like save everybody, nope, save the ones you can, nope, just save yourself, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing.
And it's definitely something I can see, but one of the more defining features with Trigun is, and this was something that we'd see in other works, was having the rogues gallery ensemble of villains throughout the line. In this case, the Gung Ho Guns.
Mm.
Which and I do think it's interesting that each of them are numbered and have their own little title, usually with name and then the title.
Yes.
And of course some of them worked better in the anime and some of them worked better in the manga. But the one
Mid Valley and Hopper the Gauntlet got a lot more characterization in the manga than they did in the anime.
Yeah. In the anime, Mid Valley was he was mainly just the smooth jazz guy, and I'd honestly say the cosplay community got more out of him with that one guy. You know what I'm talking about.
Pretty damn easy to put together.
Mm-hmm. And of course, there's also the fact that that even though there's supposed to be three of them, well, there are three that only appeared in the manga. But what? But one. For example, the first one that we had. But the thing with all of them was finding a way to make Vash break.
Hmm.
The first one being Monev the Gale, who was the one who legitimately made Vash go berserk.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are going to fall into the realm of gimmick villains. But I think the reason it works is because of the sheer variety of them. The only one who obviously doesn't fall into the gimmick villain approach simply because of his approach, and he's not technically a member of the Gung Ho Guns, was Legato.
One of the best lieutenant characters ever written. I mean, seriously, just thinking about him elicits, a slight shiver of fear down your spine. I mean, just
good old Legato Blues.
And he has the best theme song. Have you listened to the soundtrack?
Yes,
Blue Summer.
He does.
It's just like do 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 do.
Because it has that symphonic. It has that symphonic element with that very industrial, mechanical break. Like, it immediately, if we're talking about sound design and theme songs, it has like the natural flow that you would expect from the human body, and then it's such a hard break to that mechanical, industrial sound. It already sets you on edge.
Every
just from hearing it.
Oh, absolutely. Every time you hear it, the hair on the back of your neck stands up, and you're just like, oh shit, something's coming.
Although,
and you know what it is. That's the best part. You hear it before you ever see him.
I should guess that calling him...
It's so well done.
That calling him...
calling
him Legato is... going with that name was a little bit on the nose, given that it's based on the Latin word legatus.
Legatus. Yep.
But I'd say only a handful of the Gung Ho Guns went into full on characterization. A lot of it is the old school kind of gimmick villain, which I'm perfectly fine with, actually.
I was gonna say, because of the way Trigun is portrayed as far as the anime goes, gimmick villains actually work a little bit better than trying to fully characterize them, because it does kind of add to the silliness of the show, and it plays off Vash's nature very well, especially when he's being chased around by two insurance agency girls that shouldn't be insurance agents.
Mm-hmm.
And the pseudo-nihilistic realist mercy through a bullet character of Wow, why am I blanking on the name?
Wolfwood.
Thank you. God. I don't know why I blanked. I literally hit a
Happens
hard...
to the best of us, my friend.
I hit a hard stop. Like, I had it, and then it... God. I guess I got some mercy. But the gimmick villain thing does very much work. The same way it works with Afro Samurai, where you don't need the background for the characters, you just need the character design and know what the gimmick is, and it's something for our main protagonist to play off of. We don't, aside from Legato, we don't need that much backstory on them. So for a show like Trigun, it works, and I'm glad they did it because, and this is going to be my running joke, I don't want Bleach.
I'm in good company here.
So, side note about Bleach. Tite Kubo, really good artist. The art was always very nice. Man can't write his way out of a paper bag.
We know, and that's why he's
We all
always
know.
forced to write filler, because the best thing he writes is filler, because it's all nonsensical BS that doesn't matter.
Yeah. Now, that being said, I'd say that the other thing that having that kind of pagoda like style of villains with the gung ho guns does is it better helps establish knives.
Oh, knife. Another.
You mean evil Amuro Ray?
Oh God.
It's Brad Swale that voices him. That's why I say that.
Ah, gotcha.
Just like
Then I must be looking at something different because I'm getting a different name here.
are you?
Well, in the manga, well in the manga, he does fly up into space and shoot out orbiting satellites. So there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me double check something here because I'm getting a different name on behind the voice
And
actors.
it's a very good Brad Swale sound-alike. I'll give it that.
Knives, Vicious, and Legato all walk into the bar. Everybody else dies except Vash is sitting there on a fucking stool as the bar is collapsing, and he's out of bullets.
Yeah, Knives is actually voiced by Kirk Bailey.
Okay, then he did a good invocation of Brad Swale, because he definitely sounded like Amuro Ray from, or at least sounded.
It's
a lot
funny you
like
say
Amuro
that
Ray.
because believe it or not, Kirk Bailey was in Mobile Suit Gundam. He's Garmazabi.
And Garma and Amuro sounded a lot alike initially.
No,
so
then there's your answer right there.
exactly.
Although comparing him to Garma isn't
Isn't a really good card. Yeah.
because the only useful thing Garma ever did was get stabbed in the back by his college buddy.
Hey, you know that makes Vash the Garma in this situation. Blame the circumstances of your birth.
Damn, you have a point.
Yeah, I hate to admit it.
I know. I had to think about it for a second, like, how do I refute this?
You don't.
I can't. I thought about it for a second. I tried, but no, you're right. Typecasting is fun, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes.
Well, it's just like that they typecast Brad Swale later in Gundam 00. He plays the super talented pilot of a prototype that is the antagonist in that show eventually.
Yeah. But when it comes to someone like Knives, now obviously Knives gets a lot more presence in the manga than he did in the anime, but I believe the path towards his villainy is largely the same, and in a lot of cases you have the instance where they were both Vash and Knives were always very innocent, but being around humans changed them in some fashion. It's just that Knives didn't have a relationship with someone like Rem to act as a moral center. Because the way I look at someone like Knives and how he became what he was is in a roundabout way not too far removed from the reason Conrad Kurz had the extreme interpretation of justice that he did, which
Hmm.
I think Kurz is a topic I'll have to get into one of these days. But it has to do with the
Well,
fact that he didn't have, in both cases you have someone who didn't have a moral center to kind of ground them, and because of that they ended up going whole hog into a certain extreme. And
well, Mildra, I would actually, I would give you this analogy. Knives and Vash are both essentially children,
Mhm.
as far as the characters are written. The difference between the two is that Vash is a child that grew up with a mother, versus Knives is a kid that grew up on the street with no one who gave a damn about them. So take those two children and then, you know, up all of their skills to 99.
Oh, yeah.
That's basically what Knives and Vash are. It's one is moralistically good and the other is moralistically evil, but they're both products of their environment. So and it's not touched on a lot in the anime. I think the manga, correct me if I'm wrong on this, does touch on that a little bit more. But it's
A tiny bit, but not much.
yeah, but it is kind of an underlying theme where you do really view these characters as children. That's what they are. Like every other character exhibits elements of being an adult. Knives and Vash don't. One is a sadistic kid that might skin your cat, and the other one is the kid that's going to bake you cookies. Like,
He's
Or
going
in
to try
this
to
case,
bake you
donuts.
cookies or
and then
donuts
burn them.
and might accidentally burn them and half your house.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. And that comes through in the way the characters are written, which I mean works very well in contrast to the rest of this, dying desert planet that everybody is stranded on, and hopefully you find an oasis and maybe you have enough money to buy some bullets and maybe some booze and maybe sell some cabbage to someone.
Yeah. Now, with that in mind, and especially, let's return to Sunrise for a bit, so we can go into possibly the one anime of these three that has indisputably the best looking and sounding opening, and I will fight you on this because
All through the night?
yes.
Oh,
Damn
yeah.
right! You damn right!
Now,
That's gonna be stuck in my head.
now
Let's be. I want to comment on that because all three have amazing openings. Though I will
All
say
three.
this: the thing that has always pissed me off is that Trigun's opening HT. If you ever look for the full version, it sounds absolutely nothing like the song you hear in the show.
Well, and
And
also
I didn't think
the
there was
best
a full
part.
version.
The best part about that intro is the hook, because as soon as you hear "da-da-da-da-da-da," you know exactly what it is.
well,
Yeah.
It is.
the reason why I said best looking and sounding is because of the visuals that are presented. When you look
Oh yeah, those are super good.
when the thing about a good opening is that it should give you a good what kind of thing you're getting into. And in the case of something like Cowboy Bebop, as much as I love Tank, the opening and the visuals in that case is a lot of still imagery in a kind of Bond movie opening way,
Yeah.
Mhm.
which I guess is somewhat apropos, but compared to the others, doesn't tell as much. Um, in the case of Trigun, the opening scenes are some of them do match up. It's a lot of just unconnected scenes when you compare it to the actual music.
I would say it's cut and paste with a song that hopefully people like. Cowboy Bebop, it's just there for style. It doesn't tell you anything about the show.
No.
But all through the night tells a lot more with his visuals when it comes to the, and yeah, it's definitely higher up on the energy than the other two, but it does give you a lot more of a visual idea on what one can expect watching the show. Now,
Not through the night.
something I found out fairly recently is that the manga of Outlaw Star is technically a sequel.
Huh.
Technically, yes.
Yeah. That's the reason why there's the whole new generation hero thing.
And they hint at that at the end of the anime, Mildred. Do you remember the very last scene?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's kind of what they hint at. To be blunt, before we even really get into the conversation about the show proper, I don't think the creators of it actually expected it to be as popular as it actually turned out to be.
Well, actually, that's something that all three of these shows have in common, is that they were never that popular domestically, and they were all exceedingly surprised when they took off in the West.
Yeah.
Then again,
we like John Wayne movies. What can we say?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, I would love to be able to go into detail about the manga that Outlaw Star is following up on. Here's the problem, though. I can't, because I can't find, and I can barely find images. I can't find anybody who's translated this. I know it exists, but I can't. But for the life of me, nobody's tackled it. And if people have, I can barely find chapters. And if I can't find it, then there's some problems.
I just thought of something, because you guys have just brought up the fact that, these shows were popular in the West, but they weren't very popular domestically. And I think I can explain why that was. It's a cultural thing. Japan is a very uniform, very, stick to the status quo society. Like that's their thing, down to the T. So shows that talk about freedom to this level isn't something that would appeal to someone like that, to people like that.
Maybe.
At least, especially during that time, because it was all about unity and staying together and doing things to task.
Yeah.
But here in the West, again, these are space westerns. This is basically our attitude, our mentality, our culture it is personified in these characters.
Mm-hmm.
So
really
shows like this, that's why.
The thing that I do find amusing is a major theme with Outlaw Star is Taoism, which, now I will admit I am a very, very poor layman. I understand some aspects of Taoism, but my leanings have always been towards Buddhism, especially Zen Buddhism. But the concept of Tao is very individualistic. It's all about a large portion of it is is the individual way and what you leave behind, which is the Tao and the Te.
Yep. Your personal Tao must conform to the great Tao of heaven, but it must also seek to create its own path.
Yeah. And once that path is completed, there must be something that that is left behind, or some sort of mark of completion, which is the Te.
Yeah, there must be something achieved or obtained, and then essentially the cycle repeats. Which is the whole concept behind the galactic ley line, and also in this sense. And the one character, I guess, if you don't mind, let's kick off with this.
Yeah.
The only character that doesn't fit that concept in this entire story is Malfina. She is the one character who has she's just dropped in, and you can already tell she's she's the black sheep. She's she's the duck that doesn't fit,
Mm-hmm.
and she her introduction drives the story. Like her very existence is the entire point of the story.
And
So in that case, the one thing that did irritate me about the anime and why I'm actually going to do my own digging to find the follow up.
No need to. I already found it.
Oh, sweet! If you can DM me that, I would appreciate it.
Nicely done.
It's a Patreon translator, but
Hey, you know what? As long as I can understand it, I'm okay. But no, the one thing that annoys me about the show is like, for all of the build-up for Malfina's character, everything she goes through with Jean, Harry, finding out, where did I come from?
mm-hmm.
They don't wrap up that story arc, and that annoys the crap out of me. Like, out of everything, everyone else gets some type of kind of ending. Malfina gets nothing. Like, yay, she's with Jane.
no, that's her beginning. That's the point. That she was imprinted with someone else's Tao. That's why she was the path to the ley line.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else had imbued them with a Tao that was not hers. And part of what Jean did in the ley line was give her a starting point. That's where she can start her Tao. And the previous Tao ends. The tail left behind is the fact that she has her freedom.
Pretty much.
Okay, I get that. I don't know, I just wish they'd make an actual second season instead of making
Everybody wishes they'd make an actual second season. The show was damn fantastic.
Well, they technically did make a follow-up anime, but it wasn't very good.
Let us not speak of it.
Yeah, you know of what I speak.
Angel Links, which
What? Who? What? I don't.
Yeah.
I don't
You're
know.
better off not knowing, bro.
The less you know, the better.
I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're
I
talking
heard
about.
Dust in the Wind. Kirito, what are you doing? Kirito.
With that in mind, is now this is going to be a case of there are certain useless details that for some reason are imprinted into my brain for reasons I don't understand, and one of them is the unlock code for the case that held Melfina. For whatever reason, even to this day, I still know the access code. VSD02C. I have no idea why that is imprinted in my memories, but it is.
Funny.
Because it's catchy.
I guess.
I'd say it's because of Hilda's voice and the way she says it.
Oh, it's freaking Mary Elizabeth McGlynn. How the fuck do you not? How the hell do you not get attached to that voice?
I have seen some people say that that Helga possibly should have stayed a little longer to act as Jean's mentor, but I think doing that would have dissuaded from the point, because as I mentioned before, the Tao is an individual path, and outlaws are very much the embodiment of that, since outlaws have no true allegiance, unlike the people who are affiliated with the space pirates or the space force, because in the case of the pirates, even though we only hear about 2 different pirate clans, one can assume that there is a very territory-like attitude, i.e. when there are certain rules that you have to follow if you're a member of the K or the Bond pirates. and a general one is, for the most part, stay out of each other's turf. I mean, the K pirates still show up in Bond pirate turf, but they can't show up in large numbers because that would draw attention.
Well, and also following the theme of Taoism.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they even say it in the show. People are like the stars. There are bright ones, and then there are those that are dim. Well, Hilda's in the show all the way up until Farfalis, when hot ice melts. And she literally falls into a star and dies. Like, for as long as she's in the show, she is the brightest. Like,
And as was mentioned before, the brightest star burns twice as quickly.
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And not only does she introduce Malfina, a star that hasn't even really been born yet, for all comparison, Jean's star is only just getting started. Hers is about to burn out. I mean, it's a perfect 1, 2, 3 contrast between those characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think what definitely
And it
helps is
fits-
the fact that up until that point, even with Gene's baggage before the show started, up until the arrival of someone like Hilda is the classic call to adventure kind of thing within the hero's journey, which I know some
The
people
mega myth.
say the hero's journey / monomyth is overrated. I'd say that thing is endured for so long because it works.
Well,
and
it's,
also,
When
It-
used correctly.
it's imperative it's archetypical to human psychology and structure of societies in general. So it's kind of inescapable
But
to a point.
well, and also the best part about Hilda's character and the way that is she's the call to adventure personified, and what makes it work better than most with her is she never intended to bring Gene along. She was just going to kill him. Like, she was literally just using him.
mhm.
It's just, hey, that didn't work. Now did it? So it's nice to see in the first episode, beginning of the second, that Gene flips the tables on her, where I'm not a tool for you to use, but I'm still a useful tool. So take me with you.
Yeah. But the other thing to note is up until that point, Gene and Jim have basically done odd jobs, the occasional bounty hunt, but they're basically just drifting day to day. And even with the fact that Gene can be a bit of a ladies' man, even if he can be a bit shameless, as we saw in his very first fight, or rather the aftermath.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, don't worry, it's okay. Is that why you have your hand on her ass?
I love that.
Welcome to Starwind and Hawking Enterprises, where we fix everything from cars to relationships. How can we help you today?
But even after getting some, there's still the sense that he's not completely fulfilled.
Well, and they hammer that home really quick in the first episode, where, he just went to a brothel, they just got laid, because for anyone that doesn't know, when you go to a brothel, you usually take a shower before and after. So if the female comes out of the shower, you just got laid. Okay. But even then, he's completely disinterested. You know the girl knows who he is because she knows him by name. She talks to him very casually. Like, they've probably met each other multiple times before. And all he's doing is staring at space.
Mm-hmm.
And she just asked him, like, are you going to go up there one day? Are you going to go to space? Like, even she's kind of pushing him, like, she can tell, like, I know what you want. You don't want to be here on Sentinel-3.
Yeah.
What you want is you want to go to space. And he also has that motivation to do so, but he also has that fear because of what happened to him and his dad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how does it go?
Survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
Well, not even survivor's guilt. It's Oh, what's the saying in the show?
Don't
A
fear
boy
failure.
has a
A boy.
no,
has
a boy has a right to dream.
Mhm.
There's endless possibilities stretched out before him. But once he takes that step, the boy has now become a man. That's exactly what Gene's storyline is in a nutshell.
Pretty much.
He's a man. He's a man physically, but mentally, he's still a child. He hasn't gotten over that trauma. He has PTSD survivor's guilt.
Mm-hmm. Now,
It,
some now something to note is first off I'd say the Tao magic is definitely within the major themes of Taoism, because I'd say the sorcery that the K pirates have access to is also a nice way of contrasting them with the Space Force, which is well, to be frank, when what we see of the Space Force, it they would fit right in an episode of Legend of Galactic Heroes to an extent.
Yep.
With
that's because it contrasted between the pirates and the space forces. One is secrecy, almost occultish, and the other one is just raw, in your face military might.
yeah,
Space Patrol Lulico.
and that's also the reason why something like the Outlaw Star, as in the ship itself, could be considered such a technological marvel, because you have the best of both aspects built within it.
Or, in the words of Aisha Clan, wow, that's kind of kinky.
Exactly.
Oh God, Aisha.
Yeah,
Aisha, and I don't care what anyone says, Aisha is the best character, followed by Jim Hawking.
Yes.
Aisha's one of the archetypal cat girls that was made popular among the West as well.
yeah. Although I'd say the best way for me to describe Aisha is a cat Klingon, even if she's a lot less serious than, say, Worf. But on the other hand,
Oh
she
yeah.
has a better track record of not getting her ass kicked.
Yeah, she doesn't suffer the Worf effect.
Sorry,
Aisha,
Dorn, I love you, man, but you got your ass kicked a lot for for a supposed warrior.
well, let's just put it this way. Between Aisha and Suzuka, which, hey, if it was my choice, I'd be happy with either. I'll let them pick. But
Fuck
just
that! I'll
keeping
pick them both. I'm hardcore.
You're gonna be dead in 2 nights, but okay, it'll be the best 2 nights ever.
Exactly. If I'm going down like a man, bitch.
But just keep this in mind. Suzuka lost because Jean undid her sash.
Obi.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, Obi.
If he had tried that on Aisha, Aisha would have just been like, so?
Actually, that happens in the Hot Springs Planet Tenray episode, and Aisha just laughs it off like, oh geez, you can't even control yourself in front of a naked woman. But Aisha loses because she ran out of calories.
Yeah. Well, and that makes sense if you think of them as actually being partially feline humanoids. Her muscle mass and everything makes a lot more sense than some of the other anime cat girls we see. It's actually a lot more realistic what you would expect to see for muscle distribution and caloric intake.
Oh, it does, and they actually pay attention to it because right after that scene, we see her chugging down the bowl. It's like, that was supposed to feed 4 people. Can I have seconds?
Yeah, I'd say when it comes to Aisha's Tao, instead in hers, the best way to describe it is humility. Like she has so much pride about being not only a member of the Qatar, but being a officer who at the start was running her own ship. And even though there's definitely a daddy's girl effect with her, there's still such a degree of pride with her about that particular fact that even Vegeta would say, "Have a little humility for God's sake."
Well, and also even in I think it's episode 4.
Mhm.
Wait, I think the title was actually Catgirl Ready to Pounce, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but
in the intro, they even say she didn't want her position in space. She wanted to just stay home and be a pampered little daddy's girl, and instead she gets a prestigious military position.
So you can add a lot. You can add a lot of that pride to overcompensation. But because of what happens to her, she has to learn humility, and the big thing about that is basically being a glorified servant plenty of times over, including the fact that she got screwed over by her own gluttony.
Well, and also you can tell kind of what sets that off, or sets that tone off, is when she's still on the what the hell is the name of that ship? R2 Horny? Horny?
It's been a while.
Horny. Let's call it the Horny. Arte Hone. That's what it is. It's the Arte Hone.
Yep.
But
yeah,
when she's getting the like pre-recorded message and she's trying to argue back, and like the second commanding officer is just like, Aisha, it's a recording. And she's still trying to talk back to it, and you can just see the look of like, dumbass. Like, that kind of drives her character home for the rest of the audience. Like, yes, she's loud, bombastic, and boisterous, and everything else. But at the end of the day, she really is. Yeah, she's a total airhead, and also essentially she's still a child. She hasn't started her path either. Getting back to the idea of Taoism.
Yeah,
I mean she's only 18 in the show, so I mean.
Well,
yeah. Hey, you know what? To be honest, if you're 18 and the captain of your own ship, especially if it's supposed to be the pride of the Qatar Empire, that's not bad. She must have gotten some really good grades.
Oh, I think my favorite thing about my favorite little bit of trivia is that Aisha was voiced by Lenore Zahn, who also voiced 92 X-Men Rogue.
And didn't she also voice who's the blonde chick from Akame Got Kill?
Let me check.
Yeah, I'm actually checking myself to verify this.
Leona?
Actually, unless they don't have Akame Got Kill listed on here, I don't think she was ever in that show.
Okay, because whoever voiced Leona sounds almost exactly like Aisha. For the English dub, that is.
Yeah, Allison Keith.
Okay.
Allison Keith is Misato in Evangelion, Melissa Mao in Full Metal Panic. So, you know, Misato sounds a lot like Aisha, but it's two different people.
Yeah, I'm actually checking. Lenore Zahn stopped doing voice acting for any kind of animated work in 2011.
Was it just a case
I didn't know that.
Retirement, or focused on?
No, she's still doing some stuff. She's doing some live action stuff. Actually, she's got something coming out this year. Actually,
Stage Mother. Yeah.
Huh. Well, they might as well be sisters, I suppose. Then.
Yeah, but the thing about I should note this when it comes to the whole Dao thing. The thing about Gene that makes him an effective protagonist, and especially an effective protagonist in a very pulpy kind of way, is, despite his disadvantages, being able to think on his feet. Because, well, much like with Vash, he does not have the best lucky streak.
His luck is terrible. Unlike Vash, he doesn't have the luck balanced with bad luck. He just has bad luck. His one piece of good luck was spent on getting Melfina and the star.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
They kind of show us that in the first episode, where right after he gets attacked by 3 K-pirate, foot soldiers, Jim shows up in the Afro, and cue theme song, and cut theme song because the engine died.
And
Okay, I just double check something. There's a reason why Lenore Zahn hasn't been doing much acting lately.
She joined she became a politician in her country.
Yeah, she's a independent in the Nova Scotia. No, she's a liberal in the Nova Scotia right now.
Huh. That's kind of a hard left career. And pun intended.
That's just as hard left as Domonkashu's voice actor Mark Goffa becoming a dentist.
Yeah, like he went from being a voice actor to a politician or a dentist. Like, how did this happen? Like, I mean,
carefully, very carefully. It happened very carefully.
Like I said, more power to you and everything, but okay.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to now, but because of that whole thinking on it, a good example of that whole thinking on his feet is when we first see the caster, which is already admitted to be a very out there kind of tech. The K pirates, of course, calling it old magic, and even Hilda acting surprised that they have it. Is it really all that surprising when it comes to all the other weapons that they have? I mean, for fuck's sake, we see him in one single episode. We see him breaking out handguns. We see him breaking out shotguns. We see him breaking out a rocket launcher.
Jesus!
Like it's nothing. Like it's just in the back of the Afro, just chilling.
Yeah.
Hey, and it's not just your typical rocket launcher. It's the one that you would expect to be on a Gundam with like the Scorpion Turok 2 level fucking rocket launcher.
For all intents and purposes, it's a futuristic version of a Stinger.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I actually have, and yes, because the caster is actually one of my favorite
anime weapons ever.
Yeah, it actually is probably number 1 or 2.
Because nothing says "fuck you" like getting hit in the face with a black hole.
Exactly. Well, number 9 shells. Number 3 shells. Don't fuck with them.
But
nope.
The thing about that weapon is you would think having something that powerful that can cancel out the K Pirate style magic would mean that he'd have some sort of auto win. But then the very next episode, you first off note that caster shells aren't exactly easy to come by, for one, and
nope.
Two, during the whole siege thing, when you see him fire it, we go
It's
to the
dud.
build up, and it's a dud.
It's a dud.
The facial expression in that one shot is just. I have a screenshot of it to die for.
It winds up and.
Maybe I should.
I
should post it. Let me see where I can put that.
Oh yeah, post that in the council.
The thing is, casters, and I have actually done my research on this, and so again, I'm going off memory. It's not like I looked it up yesterday, but the reason casters are so rare is kind of like the Outlaw Star. You need the help of someone to build it. So it would be like the Outlaw Star itself. You would need the help of someone who is not just someone who can do Tao magic. You need someone who is a expert in Tao magic, which is why it's
actually not Tao magic at all.
Mm-hmm. It's
the Taoists. The Taoists even, the K Pirates even remark on that.
Yeah,
it's older magic. Yeah, it's wizards. It's literally wizards who use mana.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's where the Hot Springs planet Tenrei comes in, because
that's where they all are.
Yeah, the show suggests that they're the only three left who actually know how to make them, because
Yeah.
everything metaphysical in the Outlaw Style universe is based on the magic that those three individuals use. So like they're like the baseline, the core seed for everything else, like metaphysical that happens in this universe.
To make a analogy with the Nasuverse, what they utilize is true magic.
Mm.
Yes.
Although obviously their version isn't going to be as powerful as true magic in any of Type Moon's work.
Well, and if I remember correctly, the reason that no other I guess magic user, with the exception of the wizards, can create caster shells is because you can't imprint the magic into a physical form that can be used by a physical weapon. Like you can't. It's called a caster gun for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
You're giving someone who can't use magic the ability to use magic.
There's also the fact that when it came to the wizards, the source of their power, mana, is one that, with time and a whole lot of use, became more and more scarce. And the reason why they'd settle on a place like Tenrei is because that is a place that still has an abundance of mana.
Yep. That, and I believe I forget his name, is the red-haired dude. Not the horny old man, but the horny young man.
Mm-hmm.
They do explain that, like, yeah, Tenrei had a lot of mana, and ironically enough, in traditional anime fashion, it also had hot springs. So, yeah,
I found it.
There's your episode.
All right, JT, post that in the council.
Oh boy, what do we have here?
Yeah, the what face.
And that was right after the rocket launcher too, which is a case of, oh, fucking really? We hit you point blank with a fucking rocket. How are you still standing? But
easy.
It's one of my favorite reaction faces. It really.
Pagwa Santa, Pagwa Santa,
I remember one person asking me how is it that there's all these different effects with their spells when they're just chanting the exact same thing, and I think his mindset was having magic work in the way it works in, say, Harry Potter, where there's specific words that you have to use. The way I see it, as you guys know, a long time ago, I came up with a device for a story called Magi, Magic Arts Guidance Interface. And the approach with it was not to have it be the means of spell casting, but more a means of allowing a ease of the mental gymnastics to put one in a state where it could be done, i.e. it's the medium of the process. If you look at
actually, yeah. I can answer that for you, Mildra. It's Salat, I believe, has a somewhat similar, and I believe this is where they have to influence, where the process of chanting is a lot like the process of meditation. So when they're saying the Pagawa Sanfa, that's more them channeling their energy. What they choose to do with it is more of a projection of intent. You're not doing an incantation. It's literally just a chant. So
yeah, it's the same as what's done in Zen Buddhism and in Onmyoji. Mm-hmm. The mantras,
yes,
which are what's spoken, and the mudras, the hand seals, are used to focus the will, so that the will can then change the world.
Mm-hmm.
Om Mani Padme Om. Om Mani Padme Om. Om Mani Padme Om.
Rinryoto Kaijin Retsai Zen.
Yeah.
The 9 cutting hands.
And also, there is one example of this in the show, and only one, if I remember correctly, and it is in the first episode, ironically enough, right after the rocket launcher scene, where dude flying on the back of floating lackeys, he's doing the Pagala Sanfa, and then he does the Semaye. So there are multipliers you can add to the chants. It's just Pagala Sanfa is the basic chant,
Yeah.
but you can that
love
would
the-
essentially be like your special move button.
Mhm.
But that's really all it is.
I love the fact that they said "pa" with a P sound when what they should actually be saying is "bagua."
Which
Yeah, I think they might have changed that intentionally as well.
well, there's
I'm not
also
sure.
the fact that that instead of calling it Dao, they were calling it Tao, which is on one hand, I should get mad at them for that. On the other hand, nobody knew any better at that point, so I can't really get mad at them. It's you guys remember when I was annoyed about the whole Oriental Adventures fiasco because you're getting mad at a book that came out 40 years ago.
Yeah,
It's
it's an easy slip up.
People didn't know the proper way to pronounce at
Well,
that time.
What's funny is it's neither Taoism nor Taoism. It's Taoism. The tip of your tongue is hitting the back of your bottom teeth while you're trying to say a T sound.
This is why I cringe every time I do a wuxia or tianxia review of RPGs, because I know somebody is going to get on my case for my pronunciation and ignore everything else that I say.
I'm not getting on your case. I'm just mentioning the minutiae.
Yeah, I know that it's but it's more of whenever people do that, it's more of a case where I see that they have bad priorities, because instead of getting on me about me getting something wrong when it comes to the actual mechanics, no, it's about me trying to pronounce things in a language I don't understand. Yet I don't get that whenever I screw up pronunciation with Japanese or Tibetan. So make it that.
I'm surprised you don't get called out for calling it Tibetan. The same people who are making fun of your Chinese pronunciation would also be those people who be like, Tibet's not a real country.
Yeah, except that Tibet RPG takes place in Tibet, and I believe it's the 1960s. It was either 1960s or 1970. I'll have to double check later. But getting past that, one thing that I ended up finding out after doing a bit of research on the development of the show is they actually had some of the old Macross team handle the technical design parts.
Which makes sense considering some of the gymnastics we see the ships go through.
Yeah. And
although we never get a true Itano circus, so
we don't go that far, but we do get pretty close. And I think the reason we don't is simply because the space battles aren't as prevalent as the land battles.
Well, it does come through pretty strongly in I forget the name of the episode, but the one where they're actually being detained on the Space Fortress or Space Forces battle station, and they get attacked by the civilian cruiser that was hijacked by pirates and used as a Trojan horse. That has a very strong Macross feel, especially when they get to the Outlaw Star and actually start moving the wreckage out of the way.
Yeah,
like that is Macross through and through.
Now, as far as the whole grappler thing, I've seen some people say it's a little bit ridiculous to have the ship have arms like that. I don't think it is, especially when there are real world ships that are gonna have arms not too far off, but not as fast, obviously. And
to be fair, like it in terms of usability, like if you're out in space, there's gonna be a lot of debris, a lot of wrecked ships out there. Looting and being outlaws, looting would be a big thing. So having a ship with grappler arms on it wouldn't be all that unuseful. Plus, as we see, and then on top of that, of course, adding armaments to it, gives them some extra use in combat. So all in all, I could see why something like this would be invented. It's not that ridiculous.
There's also the fact that in one of the opening crawls, where they talk about the development of space combat. It's heavily implied that grappler combat is not for the faint of heart and requires a lot of physical and mental conditioning because of the fact that you effectively have to use arms separated from yourself at high speed. And I think
Well, and
that's
also
the
to
reason
touch
you see
on
that module that goes right into the eye.
But
Yeah.
and also to touch on what Shades was talking about, it's actually not a far-fetched concept at all because it already exists. There are submarines that have grappler arms right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, yeah, to use it in combat, let the technology advance, I don't know, to the point where you can put magic into fucking castor shells. But, yeah, neither here nor there. It wouldn't be that far-fetched because, well, bro, we're riding the ether stream, we're using sub-ether drive, we've discovered Dragonite, where the fuck even is Sentinel-3?
Exactly. At that point, arguing about robotic arms on a ship seems kind of ridiculous. At that point,
Exactly.
This is what you choose to focus on.
This is
And
the hill
also
you're gonna
it
die on. The most realistic aspect of this entirely fantastical show.
Look,
And also, it is kind of pointed out that grappler ship pilots, especially combatants, are viewed as it kind of like not special forces, but they're elites. Like they're a rare thing because when we see the space forces, dude, you don't see them use a grappler ship once. It's just a big battleship with a bunch of guns. Like, again, you're not gonna see someone trying to fight in a grappler ship unless you have iron fucking steel balls. Like, no, you're just gonna get the biggest gun. Yeah, you're just gonna get the biggest gun that you can possibly find, and whatever that thing is, shoot it. That's what most people in this universe would do.
The other
And
thing is that I think grappler ships are going to be more of a pirate thing because due to how they're due to being pirates, they're going to favor ships that can go in fast and hit hard and be very hard to counter.
Oh, and also they're multi-purpose because really good at looting.
Mm-hmm. But with that in mind, when it comes to the crew of the Outlaw Star, the one person who I'd say has possibly the weakest Dow in terms of his own journey, would be Jim, because
Yeah.
like it's implied that he's the son of the computer wizard, but they don't go much further beyond that. And for the most part, he just acts as Gene's straight man.
Sometimes.
Which you kind of
Sometimes
need,
even-
but that's
Sometimes Jim even becomes the funny guy.
Mm-hmm.
He does get a little bit. He does get a little bit of progression on his particular journey. It's just it starts in one episode and ends in the same episode, and happens to involve a girl who has perfected a style of space combat using cats who are also somehow telekinetic. Something they never go out of their way to explain or touch on. Really, it's just kind of there. It's like you could have made a story arc out of that, but you just kind of condensed it to one episode.
Well, they only had 26 episodes to work with, so sacrifices had to be made.
No, I know it's a shame. This is why I say, as much as I love the show, I do actually have strong complaints about it. And my number one complaint is the fact that it should have been stretched out into two 24-episode seasons.
But
Because there's a lot to pull on in this universe.
Indeed.
I'd say around that time, doing sequel seasons was a very rare occurrence. So
Yeah.
And if it's anything made by Madhouse, it's still a rare occurrence.
no, this
Indeed.
wasn't Madhouse. This was Sunrise.
I know. I'm just saying, Madhouse is my favorite studio of all time, and give me my season 2 of No Game No Life, please. we got the Zero movie. We got the Zero movie. I want my season 2. We have enough light novel volumes now. We're at at volume 11. We have enough material. Season 2.
I just want you to know that
I'm down
now
for
me.
I'm down
Now
for like
me-
a Brotherhood treatment and getting like a Trigun Maximum reboot, kind of, sorta.
I'd
Maybe.
only take it if
Helsing.
Madhouse does it.
Yes, Madhouse has to do the season 2. I don't want I don't want what happened to One Punch Man, where season 2 has terrible animation.
Oh,
And also,
don't get me
X,
started.
X, I just have to let you know, now Fumi is currently pointing and laughing at you.
oh dear.
Look, as far as the whole thing with No Game No Life, all I have to say is back of the line, bitch. You
know what?
And everybody else.
You know what? We'll all stand in a group and chant. That's what we'll do. There doesn't need to be a line. If we force our Dow at Madhouse, maybe we'll get what we want.
Oh lord.
As
Now you're
tempting
thinking.
as that would be, I don't want to have another instance where I ended up starting a meme at a convention. 'Cause I told you about that. I told you about the whole summoning an internet meme that I accidentally started at MetroCon 3 years ago.
Boy.
Good job.
There were a few people who were doing poses, who were doing T poses in a circle. I just happened to walk by and they say, "Are you guys trying to summon an internet connection?" And then they start bouncing up and down, going internet, and I'm like, okay, moving on. I come back half an hour later and I see 12 people doing the exact same thing. And I'm like, oh God, what have I done?
You only have yourself to blame for this one, Monk.
See, this is the reason why I'm a devout believer in the power of meme magic.
Oh yes, meme magic exists wholeheartedly. You're not going to ever see me argue against that.
Nope.
No, I've seen it do many miracles.
It's a strange and miraculous thing, but it does.
The one character whose Dao is is the most, I'd say, classical, is Shizuka.
Twilight Suzuka. Honestly, my second favorite character.
She's fantastic.
Now,
Oh, it doesn't hurt that she's voiced by one of my favorite VAs, Wendy frickin' Lee.
Now, the main reason I say traditional in this approach is that her whole journey is about her desire of getting revenge against a very specific member of the K Pirates specifically, and the K Pirates in general.
Oh yeah, it's what was his name? Damn it, he's a member of the Onten 7.
Mm-hmm.
It begins with
hold
a
on.
G. I forgot the name.
I've got the wiki up right now, actually.
Oh, okay, cool, thank you. Because the only one I can remember is Shimi, the most underused character of the Onten 7. Because he was just there as a gimmick. Which, I have some issues about the way they use the Onten 7. If you want to talk about gimmick characters, like with the gung-ho guns, by far, the Onten 7, when as they're portrayed in the Outlaw Star anime, are probably the most underused villains.
Very much so.
Yep.
With the exception of Leilong, I think that was his name. The first one that Jean encounters, the guy who pretended to die and they buried him and then complained about him burying him so deep.
I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that was Leilong.
Hold on. Actually, I think I've got something right here. I'm actually pulling. I've got her wiki page up right now. Hey Fong. Or no, that's the name of the place. Never mind.
Yeah, Heifong was the planet. Leilong member, he also had another name, which it's kind of a nice touch that he actually gives Gene his real name. Or maybe she was his name. Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else. I don't know. They don't... See, this is the problem. They don't do enough with their villains, and they introduce them halfway through the series that I can't even remember who was who.
Like I said,
I do remember...
I feel like that's a consequence of the fact that they only had so many episodes to work with.
Agreed. Well, I do remember Jukai, because when they're describing the Anten 7, Jukai is the guy that looks like he's in a straitjacket and a mask.
Mm-hmm.
And the only time we ever see him do anything is he floats Hazanko towards the galactic ley line.
Yeah, also I found Suzuka's
else.
target. Itoriga.
Yep.
Yeah, Hitoriga. That's it.
Hitoriga. Yeah.
Itoriga.
Who, with a name like that, it's kind of amusing that his weapon of choice is a Qatar.
Mm-hmm.
But that considering the appearance stylings of the K pirates is amusing, because the Qatar, I would not consider the Qatar a Chinese weapon.
It's. I mean, if you're on the western border of China, maybe more common, but still not common.
Mm-hmm. But when it comes to Suzuka's Dao, first off, I'd say the sole reason that she ended up losing was because of that. It was a bit too much faith in that reputation of Twilight Suzuka, i.e. that whole gimmick of giving someone one last day to enjoy their life before they die is gonna put over the whole is a psychological tactic, obviously, and when that happens, somebody's probably gonna be fighting defensively, and in Gene's case, his fighting style is whatever works, I'm gonna do it. Even if that means pulling the dirtiest of dirty tricks.
Not to mention that he also fought it aggressively rather than defensively.
Yeah.
He did something extremely unpredictable in that respect, because, like you said, a psychological play to tell them you've got one day left to enjoy your life. That usually was going to do one of two things to people. They're either going to try and set up a bastion you can't get into, or they're going to be frozen by fear and just can't act at all.
Yeah.
Oh, and also you see that exactly when he realizes, oh shit, you're Twilight Suzuka. He freaks out, and Jean just walks in and is like, hey, I had some questions about this, and then she, immediately tries to attack him, and Jean's like, oh, what the hell is this bitch's problem? And Fred Lowe is like, oh wait, you can actually hold your own against her? And he's like, yeah, why? That's Twilight. Who? Like, Gene has no, in a weird way, Gene's own ignorance is actually what probably helped him. And Suzuka also has that air of femininity about her, and the same way that she uses her own reputation and her own kind of stoic, I'm here to kill you type of aspect to intimidate characters, or, other people into basically not doing anything to defend themselves. Jean's essentially a rapscallion with no fucks given, and he uses her own, like, just gonna take this real quick. Smells nice. And boom. He defeats her by smelling her obi and making her embarrassed. Which, ironically enough, is also the reason she takes interest in Jean, because most people would freak the fuck out and run because I'm Twilight Suzuka.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy just stole my obi and smelled it and held it in front of my face, and then tossed it back and say, "All right, see you next sunset." Like, and come on, like think about it from that perspective. If you were Suzuka, I'm an infamous assassin, and this dude just halfway undressed me and then smelled my fucking obi and then tossed it back in my face and said, "See you tomorrow." Yeah, I'd probably be interested in that person too.
Like, who the hell is this guy to be that confident about it?
Seriously. But it's a great interaction, and it only lasts, like what, 2 minutes?
See, there are ways to make your protagonist an idiot and actually make it work.
Yeah.
Yes.
Unlike some writers, sorry. I think I need to get a lozenge or something.
Well, you know what? Just be glad that Suzuka didn't call Jean darling, and we can move on.
Oh god damn it!
I'd prefer not thinking about that, because the idea of a yandere assassin is one of those things that's going to keep me up at night.
Don't ever bring that up again.
Yeah. At the very least, I can say that story would be finished before Yandere Simulator does.
Oh, hey, you know
Just
what?
like Yandere Simulator's fan game was finished basically in 2 weeks to the same point his is at now.
Speaking of
You know what? I have to tell all of you guys one thing. If Suzuka did call Jean darling, just take comfort in the fact that at least they're already in space.
Speaking of yanderes, we're getting a new season of Higurashi this August. A new reboot of Higurashi this October.
Another one?
No, they're just rebooting the old one with a better
They're giving it the
anime.
Brotherhood treatment.
Well, no, technically no, because the original anime covered the original material. So this is just more of a high definition reboot.
Yeah.
Redirection.
Let's hope we're not going full Kai with this. Never go full Kai.
So, if
But
you don't
it would
wanna
be
talk about
interesting. It would be interesting to see what kind of direction they put on it to enhance the creepiness, because the original Higurashi anime was actually pretty damn creepy. I mean, it actually really creeped you the fuck out. Bad shit happened to nice little kids. But anyway, I just had to share that with somebody. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Higurashi is one of my favorite, and if this does well and everybody wants to come back, I would love to talk horror anime, because there's a few on my list. Because that's
I'm
my
down.
favorite genre.
Oh, I'm down.
I'd have to watch a couple, because I've never actually watched the original Higurashi. But depending on what other topics you bring up, I might be able to speak up a little bit.
Have you watched another?
No, I have not.
Oh, you need to watch another.
If we end up
I've got
talking about horror anime, I know that the one that I want to focus a good amount of time on is Monster.
Oh, Monster's such a good anime.
Monster is good. I don't like Tokyo Ghoul. I don't care what anybody says. Judge me.
It's not horror.
I don't care for it.
That's not horror. That's just gruesome.
Well, it's
No, you
shonen.
don't get horror.
It's
Oh,
just
God.
It's just really gritty shonen. That's all I'm gonna say.
It's girl.
Yeah.
That's all.
Elfen Light is good. Elfen Light is good. You know what? This might be blasphemy. I actually did like Corpse Party. I actually did.
Corpse Party was
Don't ask me why I liked it. I just did.
like Corpse Party was.
It's not exactly scary. It's not exactly scary,
just
but
gruesome.
High School of the Dead is a fucking masterpiece. I'll stand by it. Fight me.
It's entertainment.
All right.
But getting back to the matter at hand.
Excuse us.
I would say, when it comes to the concept of the galactic ley line, now putting aside that one guy I watch a fair bit for his movie reviews is Filmento, and he's talked about that there are 3 things that you need for an ideal plot. Those things are goal, stakes, and urgency. And I'd say the galactic leyline fills this role for the most part. The goal, obviously, is well the galactic leyline. The stakes are is the potential within it, given the whole ancient civ and the mystery about what Melfina's connection is, and the urgency is well they're not the only ones looking for it because you've got the
Pirates.
you've got the Space Force, and you've got the wild card that is the McDougal brothers.
Fuck the McDougal brothers.
Like a bad cold, they just don't go away.
And,
And also you also have Wong, the Dr. Wong, who's also working with the McDougal brothers, who knows probably more about the galactic leyline than anyone else, since he's kind of the one who made the Outlaw Star Malfina.
Yeah.
Wong's the Dr. Wong is the Hojo of the Outlaw Starverse.
I would say that he is a bit more dignified. I would say that he's a bit more dignified than Hojo because of the fact that, he's definitely a mad scientist. His mad is the fact that whatever he saw in the dragon's tombstone has made him almost obsessed in the way that a Lovecraft protagonist would be obsessed.
Yeah, it's like he saw a warped projection of Cthulhu through water and a mirror. Mm-hmm. So that he didn't go insane, he just became manic.
Yeah.
Oh, and also the thing about Wong is, out of all of the characters, he's the only one that really gets a full start to finish ending, because once he gets to the ley line...
Mm-hmm.
And cool. That's all I wanted. Mm-hmm. Thanks. Bye. He's gone.
But and when it comes to the McDougal brothers, I see them as a representation of the dark side of being an outlaw. We already have the heroic side with the crew, but with the McDougal brothers, that's the more pragmatic. I'm in this for the pay kind of thing, because, well, the sole reason they end up turning on the Cape Pirates is because, well, the Space Force offered them a new contract.
Mm-hmm.
And to further hammer home that kind of duality, the elder McDougal brother is the only other one with a caster, even if his caster looks like a shortened version of a Shakujo.
Yeah, and the reason for that is because the casters, prior to being made into guns, caster used to just be the word that referred to anyone that used mana to cast magic.
Mm-hmm. And in it, which is why it ends up making a contrast as opposed to someone like Gene, who when asked what sort of weapon or firearm he'll bring to a fight, his answer is, "How many pockets do I have?" Because remember, whenever he's fought, say, cyborgs, his approach is fire all, screw sportsmanship, fire all the guns.
Yep.
And even the whole Death Rob.
Death Rob
had learned that the hard way when he asked if you didn't have a gun, would you be scared? Well, I have one. In his particular case, the McDougals also rely on that whole reputation thing, even if the younger brother has a whole lot more screws loose.
Harry?
Yeah,
Harry, yeah.
You're assuming he had screws to begin with, but I see your point.
Harry's the same one who had a very unnatural obsession with Melfina.
Well, that's because they were both like similar creations. They were both basically
No. Guan gave Harry that body when he aligned with them. Harry didn't have a body like that prior.
when it comes to that body,
Yeah.
yes, but he was basically a construct.
Well,
That's
the thing
true,
is,
but-
Harry was more of a Harry was synthetic. Malfina, on the other hand, and they lightly touch on this, but they don't go into enough detail. Again, they should have made it 48 episodes. Harry is a construct.
Whereas Melfina was grown as a biological android.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Malfina is unique. She's different. Like, you could argue that whereas somebody else might be an android or a cyborg or a construct,
I'd say it's
of her own.
I'd say it's probably more in common with say the bioroids in Appleseed, or the or some of the synthetic types of life within the Xenosaga trilogy. You know, guys like Guinan and Guinan Jr.
Actually, I would say if you took away the time limit on their lifespans, Malfina would be essentially a replicant from the Blade Runner universe.
Yeah. But but when it comes to Harry, he's a hair's breadth from being a yandere.
I would say he already is, but that's just me.
Now, granted, that hair is especially thin, but it's still a hair's breadth away. And
a breath of hair so small that you could cut it with your fingernail.
Yep. And I think that provides a decent little dichotomy, because the whole gimmick with the McDougal brothers is doing the dirty work. Like, the sole reason that the Space Force hired them is because they didn't want the knowledge that they had collaborated with pirates on the XGP project to be known by anybody.
And also, let's be honest, you know that Halcyon missile was probably bought and paid for by the Space Force.
Oh, it probably was, and they probably and there's also the whole thing of them having 2 Eldorados.
Yeah, kind of makes you wonder where they got that from.
Like, probably the reason they were so willing to jump ship and take contracts from the Space Force is because they were getting paid a hefty amount of wong.
Well, and also we know the fact that, I'll be honest, a lot nicer, and like it was kept in a lot better shape than Gene's, and he doesn't seem to have any problem expending shells, and they go out of their way to tell us not only are caster shells rare, but they're not cheap.
They're going extinct.
Yeah, they're not cheap. They're rare, and going and buying them from a pawn shop, well, it's a dud.
The number 19 shell.
Yeah, Ron never has a dud. So that tells me you got 2 ships, Halcyon missile, nice caster, shells that aren't duds. Tells me you're pretty well funded by somebody.
Well, they're loaded.
Yeah.
The McDougals are loaded. They're meant to be. I mean, it's obvious, just from the discussion, that to anyone who has, a modicum of common sense, that the McDougal brothers were created as a foil to Gene and Jim. Essentially, to be, you got the guys who are always down on their luck, almost no money. The only thing they have is their ship, and they can't keep it well stocked. Versus, you've got these 2 guys who ostensibly do the same type of work, the grunt work and black work, but are less moral, more loaded, and clearly have no qualms about doing certain jobs that Gene and Jim would have issues with.
Yeah, that's definitely.
Well, and also the McDougals. It's hinted at, but it's not explicitly stated that in the show, they did have some type of involvement, not directly but indirectly, with the XGP project. That's why they know about the Outlaw Star in general. They know it's the XGP.
It's because they worked with Dr. Guan so much.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, can I just
Sure, that
interject
job
real
paid
quick?
a lot.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say I know that job paid a lot, and I'm done.
Hey, I just gotta say, it's late. I gotta get to bed. I work in the morning.
All right, no
Sorry, dudes.
no worries, man. We're probably gonna be wrapping up soon, anyways.
But before I go, I just want to say, first of all, thanks for having me. Good time with Joe. And second of all, to anybody, to all you guys here, and to anybody who will be listening to this podcast later, if you love the space westerns, I recommend a little AMV video called "Tainted Donut."
Yes, I've seen that one.
Oh god, it is so good, and it was made all the way back in 2001, and it's still such
It
good
still holds
quality.
up. That's so rare for an AMV that old to still be that good.
Yeah, I mean the guy actually used like Photoshop and Premiere, and before that stuff became commonplace in AMV. So yeah, Tainted. So look it up. AMV Tainted Donuts. The crew of the Bebop goes after the bounty for Vash the Stampede. So it's pretty. How can you resist?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's going on
that's
my
all.
list.
All right,
Thanks for the suggestion, bro.
no problem. Oh no, you'll love it. It's got a great rap song by Shaka Zombie. So there you go.
And it's the first. It's also the first suggested search when you type in AMV and then Tainted on YouTube.
Oh, there you go. Oh yeah, you'll love the hell out of it. It's great. You'll watch it 1,000 times. Okay, everybody. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
All right, man. Have a good night.
Peace, bros.
With that said, with the relationship that anime has nowadays in the States, do you think? I'm not saying a full on boom period comeback, but do you think that there's the possibility in the future that this concept, the space western, might get dipped into, especially with companies like Netflix and Crunchyroll working a lot more closely with the anime industry?
I'm gonna let Shades X over here go first before I.
All right, what was the question again? Because I kind of blanked.
With the fact that you're having companies do more close collaboration with anime studios and getting more original content kind of things, especially like some of the stuff that we covered during the monastery recently regarding some of the originals that Crunchyroll is getting. Do you think that there's the possibility that this genre, the space western, might get dipped into in the future?
I wouldn't rule it out, but I don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to take the right set of circumstances for them to want to consider that idea. Like there had maybe because of like the recent the stuff with Cowboy Bebop that they did during the first quarantine, where they had the big celebration, had everyone performing the song. There was a renewed interest in Cowboy Bebop. If the right players are in place, that might lead to something, but I wouldn't exactly call it a guaranteed thing. I think it's a long shot, to be honest, but I wouldn't say never.
Mm-hmm.
So my view on it is that entire era, Trigun, Cowboy Bebop, Outlaw Star, all of them coming out around the same time, was an era of a rugged frontier for all of humanity. The internet was becoming much more popular, and we were moving out of web rings and BBS. People were becoming more interconnected than ever because of the increase into the information age. And because of both the expanding nature of real life coinciding with this rugged individualist frontiersman aesthetic coming from these shows as they came to the West, I think it was a very unique and serendipitous concurrency of events. Sure, space westerns will get dabbled in here and there, more so in Japan than in the U.S. As was mentioned earlier in the show, the last space western that I can think of that came to the U.S. that got any sort of traction was Space Dandy, and Space Dandy was also a comedy. And I don't think the mindset of today's anime viewers, the people who drive the ratings, frankly a younger crowd, more of them, they can come through multiple channels of media connections. I don't believe they have the same type of mindset that's looking for these types of stories. It may change in the near future, especially with all of the stuff happening in the actual world. But as of right now, it's going to be a niche product, if anything. If it does occur, it will be niche.
Which is certain. It was always going to be a possibility, and with that, there's a certain mantra that I want anyone watching this to keep in mind, because this is something that has been at the heart of my approach for years. I firmly believe that it is contradictory to call yourself a otaku, to call yourself a geek, to call yourself a nerd, whatever term you prefer using, and at the same time long for a type of conformity. I think that these are two things that cannot go together, because when you become that thing, you are in one way or another stepping away from what is going to be considered the normal. Even, and I know somebody might say, but anime has become more popular now. It's become more accepted. Much like the rant that I did with tabletop gaming, that's only true if you're dealing with what I've come to call the easy shit. Anywhere else, and it's still going to be that level of niche. You're still going to have people less familiar the further you get away from the stuff that happens to be showing on, say, Toonami. That is not me calling anybody out. That's just me stating a fact. And the people who long for conformity, they will never last. Because when they end up leaving, what you're gonna have are the people who came in because they wanted to come in, not because they wanted to follow a trend. And those are the people who are going to be a lot less willing to leave. So the point is, even nowadays, with everything at your fingertips, there is no excuse for conformity within nerd culture.
And the thing is, nerd culture, as we know it through the term, it was never mainstream or popular to begin with.
If it was, we wouldn't have gotten all the shit that we did, and I wouldn't have gotten threats of school suspensions for all the fights I got into, picking fights with bullies.
Well, the way I like to explain it is this: in the '80s, there was a show called Freaks and Geeks. So that kind of tells you how people viewed, freaks and geeks, nerds. They viewed us as social outcasts. Then in the '90s, you had the moral panic, where, oh my god, if you play D&D, you must be a Satanist. No, I'm playing an orc, or I'm playing an elf. Like, it's not to do with Satan. Like, why? It's like, you're casting rituals. No, I'm just rolling dice. And then fast forward to, where we were 5 years ago, and you have Big Bang Theory as like one of the most popular fucking series on TV, even though it's absolute garbage. And it's like, yeah, this is cool. I'm a gamer girl. Hey, look at me. My name's Alinity. Like, no, you're not. Stop it. Get out of here. You don't even play the game. You hate puzzles. You look it up on YouTube. Like, no.
I do.
Like,
I will end on this before we get into the wrap up. I do not consider myself a gatekeeper. What I consider myself is quality control. But
you know,
Yep.
I'm gonna start using that term. I agree. I agree.
like
And go ahead.
we have quality assurance when it comes to product testing. It's the same principle.
As for what you were referring to there, Doku, that idea where, oh my god, it's so trendy to be these geeks and nerds from the, like Big Bang Theory and all this other stuff. I call that, and I think others have in the past as well, the commodification of nerddom.
I think I'm guessing when you talk about that, you're referencing the video that Action Points did all those years ago.
It might be. I'd have to watch it again, but I
Well,
always thought of it as making nerdiness, making geekiness a commodity that people can purchase and wear as fashion. Because, oh my god, it's so fashionable to be a nerd now. Lol. Like, no, my response was always like, you're not a nerd. You didn't get constantly shoved around and treated as second class because you had interests nobody else was interested in.
Well, I actually like you bring that up because this is a really good segue. Because my still existing nerdiness that hasn't become mainstream is going to come out. My business mindset and my economy mindset and my advertising mindset. Well, yeah, you have an entire generation that grew up pretty much second class. They weren't the quarterback. They weren't the head cheerleader. They played video games. They played D&D. They read comic books. And they got bullied for it as kids. Well, that whole generation has grown up now. So, footballs and pom-poms, or are you going to sell them video games and comic books?
Although,
Which one do you think it is?
I will say this: I was never the quarterback, but I did break the quarterback's arm.
Hey, I was the free safety and the running back, and I had hit someone hard enough to break a few ribs.
I threw a bully through a plate glass window into the kilns behind the art room.
Oh, ouch!
But with
That probably
that said, I do want to thank everybody for taking the time to come onto the show and enjoy this particular madness. I think this is going to go down as a resounding success.
I definitely enjoyed myself.
Oh, I'll come back every time, even if I know very little about the subject. I'll get my edges in. Trust me on that one.
We'll probably be doing this again next week. And as I mentioned earlier on in the show, I want to reiterate this is how things are going to go. And I might make a little 1 minute video on the matter or something like that. This is the plan going forward. At 5 o'clock Central on Saturdays is Monastery Gazette, which is going to focus on crowdfunds and news. On Sunday is going to be GeekWatch, where we talk about whatever sort of geek shit that we can come up with. I will probably keep, and this is where it's important to keep an eye on my social media, because I will probably put an announcement on what the next topic will be for that. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not putting it up to fan vote because I feel that would create more problems than it's worth. But when it comes to the topics, even though this has been an anime focused week, that's not to say that we're going to be limited to just that. Because when I say talk about geek shit, I mean all of it. So if I feel like going into tabletop-based discussions, that's on the table. If I feel like going into video game-based discussions, that's on the table. If I feel like going into fucking crocheting topics, that's on the table. That's not going to happen because I can't sew to save my life, but the point is anything and everything is on the table because it's all within the mission of the monastery as a whole. So with all that said, thank you all for coming to watch. I hope to see you all again here at 9:30 proper. And Doku, hopefully you do not suffer the Doku curse next week, because we will be going in at 9:30, and I should note 9:30 Central Time, so convert to your time zones accordingly. And it'll be a different topic. It probably will be something other than anime because I don't feel comfortable with doing 2 anime topics back to back. But there will be some fun to be had, and there will be the chaos that one would expect in the Internet's open bar. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk, and join the watch.